Welcome to the regularly scheduled public meeting of April 19th, 2021 of the Township of Washington Township Council. Adequate notice of the meeting was given in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by the Township Clerk to at least 2 newspapers in January, and this meeting has been posted in the Township Bulletin Board, electronic message board, WCTV, and on the Township website. Salute to the flag.
Pledge allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Sue, roll call.
Councilman Casio.
Here.
Councilman DeSena.
Here.
Councilwoman Morgan.
Here.
Councilman Sears.
Here.
Council President Feeney.
Here. Public service announcement, April 19th, 2021. New Jersey Department of Health Vaccine Call Center provides information on how to register for the COVID-19 vaccine, as well as how to schedule vaccination appointments as people become eligible. The number is 1-855-568-0545. The lines are open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Also, please note on the Township website under the COVID-19 Task Force, I have some volunteers who are making appointments for people in town, residents, and at this time, everyone is eligible who's over the age of 16. If you need additional information, please email me or call me directly. My number's on the Township website. Thank you. Vaccine locations. For current Bergen County locations, please visit our website for links and further information. 2021 dog license renewals. Final notices have gone out. Failure to respond to the letter registering your pet by Friday, April 30th will result in a summons by being issued by our animal control officer. If you feel you have received the notice in error or you no longer own your pet for whatever reason, please call the clerk's office at 201-664-4425. They will remove your pet from their records to avoid any further mailings. Hydrant flushing. Beginning March 29th, running through April, Suez Water will be conducting hydrant flushing in the township. The necessary work may cause temporary discolored water. If you experience discoloration, just run the water until it is clear. There is no need to boil your water. If you have any questions, please contact Suez directly at 1-800-422-5987. Free tree seedlings will be available at the DPW building on April 24th and any leftover seedlings on May 1st on a first-come, first-served basis. Please visit our website for further information. Free wood chips available to township residents. With the warmer weather approaching, the township DPW will be doing some tree trimming and chipping of tree limbs on township properties, parks, and would like to offer wood chips to township residents. The wood chips will be piled at Cherry Field and available for residents to load them. During the public comment section, we ask that callers please turn off or mute their television to reduce any feedback. There is a traffic alert. Please be advised the county will begin milling and paving Ridgewood Road between Pascack Road and Lafayette Avenue up to the Westwood border on April 20th through April 26th from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. daily. Expect delays and please plan an alternate route. Okay. Nomination of council representative to planning board class 3. I nominate Tom Sears.
I'll second.
So resolution number 21190, planning board class 3, council representative Tom Sears. We have a motion and a second. Sue, roll call.
Councilman Casio.
No.
Councilman DeSena.
No.
Councilman Sears.
Yes.
Council President Feeney.
Yes.
And Councilwoman Morgan.
Yes.
Mayor,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations, Mr.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike.
Welcome back. That had to be the quickest 2 weeks anyone ever went off and came back on.
Okay. Mr. Mayor appointment.
Thank you. Hold on just one moment. To the council president and the council of the Township of Washington regarding an appointee to the Library Board of Trustees. Please be advised that I am appointing Elena Skinner as a trustee to the Library Board for a term ending December 31st, 2025. Thank you.
You're welcome. Congratulations, Mrs. Skinner.
This one needs a motion and a second, and then we skipped one.
I'll motion.
I'll
I'll second it.
Councilman Casio,
Yes.
Councilman DeSena,
Yes.
Councilman Sears,
Yes.
Council President Feeney.
Yes.
These are all from the beginning of the year, and I apologize. Councilwoman Morgan.
Yes.
Okay, and Stacy, if you can go back to the mayor appointment for the planning board, class 2.
Yeah, sorry about that. My eye jumped over
Okay.
it. Please be advised that I'm appointing Vladimir Wojno-Oransky as a Class 2 member to the Planning Board for term ending December 31st, 2021. Vladimir, I apologize if I mispronounced your last name.
So I actually don't have that on mine, just so you know.
Yeah, on the agenda.
Okay.
Then that one does not need a council resolution. This is just
Okay.
strictly a mayor's appointment. So now we can go on.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. Sure. Moving on to general public comment. To participate in the general public comment portion of the meeting, please click on the link below to join the webinar. You'll be asked to state your name and address for the record, and we ask that only one person speak at a time. There is a 5-minute time limit per caller. Please note that this is public comment, and comments by the council, mayor, or administrator will be at the end of the public comment section. At the end, no more calls will be accepted. Motion to open public comment section.
So move.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, we see one hand up.
When you get a chance, could you make me a host? I don't have any,
I made you a co-host. You have a co-host. You should be able to do everything I do.
I think now I can, yeah. Okay, there's someone who called in there on the panel, but I don't see a name. If you could unmute, please, and then state your name and address.
You can hit *6 to unmute.
Thank you. This is Janet Sopkowitz, 849 Robinwood Road, Township
Yes.
of Washington.
Good evening, Mrs.
Hi, how are you?
Sopkowitz. How are you?
Good evening. I would just like to address a couple of items. One of the reasons in the paper that the mayor wanted to purchase the swim club was that he didn't want to lose out by not buying the property and feeling, in a few years from now that, he should have bought it. And I would just like to mention that I was trying to buy the Bethany Church, the original one, to move the ambulance corps there. And I could not get the 4 votes. I only had 3, and I did put it out there a couple of times. And I thought it was really a good idea because the ambulance corps could have moved right into that building. It's absolutely gorgeous. And they would have been here for 4 years. It's already 4 years have gone by. But the good thing was the road department would have been able to go into that building, the ambulance corps, which has had a lot more room with garages and things, so that we could have worked more, toward the DPW building. Also, I would like to discuss, since we're talking about not buying property, Mr. Morris, all the prior administrations, as the mayor keeps mentioning.
Stacy, they can't hear Mrs. Sopkowitz on TV.
Oh, okay. Ricky, could you check that? Go ahead, Mrs. Sopkowitz. He'll check that while she's speaking.
Okay. I shut my TV off. Does that matter?
No, it doesn't matter. Go ahead, Mrs. Sopkowitz. Sorry about that.
Okay. So anyway, so Mr. Morris, there are certainly prior administrations who negotiated with him, starting with Mayor Wenzel, and then Mr. Devine did have talks with him, but he was only there a few months, Mr. Devine. and I negotiated with him pretty much too. There were rumors here and there at that time also about different developers that did approach him, although I have no proof of that, but you know, there had been rumors. I kind of feel that Mr. Morris really never wanted to end the negotiations. They've been going on for over 15 years. And I think a lot of it had to do with inheritance issues with the heirs. And I think that he didn't want to leave here. He was negotiating, kept negotiating. I went up to like $700,000 and I said, this is it. And he was so glad. He said, this is great. This is great. And then, because I was applying for a grant. And then a few weeks after that, he came in and he said, I need another 100,000. So I really believe he really never wanted to get to the end of it because he wanted to stay where he was. And I don't blame him. He was, you know, on Pascack Road, easy to get to everything in town and so on. And I don't blame him, but I don't really believe that he wanted to end negotiations. Now, of course, you know, things are different. People are older and things like that. And this developer probably had something. Okay, my next thing I would like to ask for is the appraisal. Did that come in for 450 Pascack Road?
Mrs. Sobkowitz will be.
Oh, that's right. You can't answer. Yeah, answer later. Okay.
No problem.
I was just interested to see whether, you know, it came in lower, being that, you know, the ingress and egress is kind of tough, and the lot size constraints, and you know, apparently there's a lot less value now that, you know, quite a few years have gone by. My last thing is the deal they made to park trucks at the church from 7 to 5 p.m. at, you know, Good Counsel, from Monday to Saturday, from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. What happens if there's an emergency that they need the trucks after 5 p.m.? And also, the trucks aren't supposed to be there Sunday. So where do they go on Sunday, or who takes them? And who is responsible if there's an accident in one of those, you know, parking spaces that maybe somebody else came in to use, or is it going to be cordoned off or something? So these are things that came into my mind as I read the articles this weekend. And thank you very much for your time. And I guess we'll hear from you later.
Thank you, Ms. Sobkowitz. Have a good evening. Thank you for calling in.
You too.
Mr. Udina.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. How are you this evening?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, thank you. Just state your name and address, please.
Awesome, thanks. My name is Anthony Udina at 876 Ridgewood Boulevard East. So, yeah, I just want to know if there's any update on the 450 Pascack and if the appraisal was received. That is it. I hope everyone has a good evening. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you for calling in. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
I'm having trouble demoting Mr. Udina. Would you mind? Thank you. Would you mind?
Do I need to leave?
No. For some reason, my access isn't working. I think Sue can take care of it. So thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Let's see where he's going. All right, Mr. Udina, I'm going to remove you. You can
Yes.
come back on.
Not working, right?
There you go.
Yes, there's someone, I don't know who this is.
Mr. Ferrara's up here.
Ferrara's up here. Okay, so
All right, and then there's another.
Mr.
one.
Ferrara, good evening. Mr. Ferrara?
You hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay. It's William Ferrara, 2556 Cleveland Avenue.
Yes, thank you for calling in. How are you? What can the council do for you this evening?
There's a number of things I wanted to bring up, but the first thing, and to me, the most important thing, revolves around the use of the 911 emergency call feature. Last Wednesday afternoon, my 6-year-old grandson was riding his bicycle up at George School and managed somehow to get his fingers caught in a chain. So the long story short, he's fine, although he did end up in the hospital to have an x-rayed. But a woman that was up there, because my son was tending to him, called 911 on her cell phone. And the operator that she spoke to asked her what town was she in, because she said she was at the George School parking lot. Apparently, what is uncovered is if you call 911 from your cell phone, it does not go to the police dispatch at Hudson Avenue. It goes to the county center, and then the county center relays it down to the town to respond. From the look on some of your faces, I don't think you knew that either. I didn't know it either. So I think that that's something should be straightened out, given the preponderance, publicized very much so, given preponderance of people who use cell phones, and very many don't even have a landline phone. So, I mean, I don't want to comment on whether we should have our own police dispatch. That's a different issue. But I just think for that should be publicized, that if you call 911 from a cell phone, it's going to go to the county, and they will ask you what town you're in. So she was a little bit surprised when she got that phone call. But the next thing I wanted to ask about is this $900,000 roughly federal grant that's coming to the town. I don't know if you've decided how to use it. I was going to make a suggestion. Is the way you use it, I think you should use it, is make sure you use it in ways that aren't covered by other potential grant monies. I would not put in Green Acres qualified projects in for the $900,000. I'd go for Green Acres money and leave this separately. And I'd make 4 suggestions. And I think it has to do with clean energy. I think we should consider putting solar on the roof of the library, the town hall, the new DPW building, and someday the emergency services building. I mean, with respect to the emergency services building, I did look at an article I found. It's called some publication, probably Tom knows about it, the Firehouse News. A number of years ago, had an article about clean energy in the firehouse. And there, the estimate was a 3 to 5 year payback, and that was based on an architect like Mr. Connolly, who specializes in firehouses. So you might want to consider that. The other thing, it's $850,000 that in the resolution you passed on the 5th. Where's that money coming from? And the second line is mortgages. Is the town going to be required to pick up their mortgages and pay their mortgages? So is it 850 plus? I don't know. And then also, I read the Community Life last week, and I read the article about the Hillsdale budget. And that's how I found out that our mayor and their mayor were having conversations about the community center, which is now the Bethany Community Center. So I just go back over this whole thing with the way the April 5th meeting was handled was pretty poor, in my estimation. There was no emergency about finding a space for the DPW equipment. There's no emergency about the swim club. They could have been put on the agenda for tonight and put in public, and everybody would know. And I think we should have heard from our mayor, even though I know he was out sick, or somebody, about negotiations or discussions with Hillsdale about a community center, not from their mayor in the newspaper article. Then I wanted to clarify.
Mr. Farrar, we lost you. If you could talk, I don't know.
It's okay. So just,
can you hear me?
I think he's having just a trouble with the speaker.
Okay. When Chief Skinner was in to discuss the police budget, the salaries and wages line, he indicated during that conversation that he hadn't put in for a new additional officer late in the year. He never indicated how much money was put in for that. if you go back to the tape, you get into the discussion of the base amount based on last year's ending numbers.
Sorry, you have 5 seconds.
5 seconds?
5 seconds left.
Okay. I'll comment on something else later on.
I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farrar. Have a good evening.
Okay, this other phone number is 899.
Yes, let's remove Mr. Farrar, though. I don't know what's going on. I don't have any permission, so.
Okay, whoever this is 899-7446. See if we can get them to unmute.
And the right amount of.
Doesn't even look at a number, actually. Too many numbers.
Yeah, no.
I asked him to unmute. If you could press *6 on your phone?
There's too many numbers on that number.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
I think your car warranty's
All
up.
right, that person. All right, that person, he left.
Good evening, Mr. Ullman. Could you please unmute your microphone?
Good evening. Michael Ullman, 2 Clark Avenue.
Good evening, Mr. Ullman. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Just a follow-up on at the March 11th meeting, I had inquired on a couple of expenses for the fire department, and the administration was silent on that questions, as was the council. And I had followed up on March 14th to you, Council President, and I'm still awaiting a response, and just wondering if there's an issue, or are the questions, too difficult to answer? And that was it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ullman. Have a good evening. Good evening, Mr. Durso.
Mr. Durso, are you there?
Mr. Durso, you're unmuted. I'm not sure what's right. Sue, he's unmuted.
Yeah, I don't see anything with him either.
I don't know what's going on.
Hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
It's very, I'm sorry, it's very choppy.
Mr. Durso, I'm sorry, you're very muddled.
Hello?
Yes, that's better.
This is ridiculous.
Do you want to try signing back in again, Mr. Durso?
Okay, is there anyone else on the line? He's having some trouble.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry, it's very choppy, but Joe Durso, 12 Viola Terrace.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Durso. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well, thank you. I just want to state for the record, the way that these public sessions are going, it's wrong in my opinion. There should be dialogue, but I understand, it's your decision. Also, I know there's a hot topic with the church, with the DPW, and I don't feel the mayor, in my own opinion, had any other site in mind other than OLGC for the temporary site for the DPW. It just seems odd that he went through the motions with Cherry Field and the property next to the bar. So I want to know, is there record of all the other places that he or the administrator contacted? And I also feel by entering into a contract with OLGC is an ethical violation and a conflict of interest. And based on my questions that I'm going to ask, I will email this to all of you, so it would be a little bit easier to follow if you want at the end of the public session instead of writing it down, because I know this is very choppy. I'm not sure I'm coming through well. My first question is, I'm still waiting on an answer from the last meeting on how the attorney allowed the mayor to select a person to the council who was not voted on by the council. Sears and Fedini were voted on and ended in a tie. I Oprah requested the law, and the law says the mayor can choose if there was a tie. It did not say he can pick whoever he wanted. So the town attorney, in my opinion, didn't advise well. Or should he have sent this back to the county committee for 3 new names to be voted on? My next question is the lease agreement with OLGC. Is it an agreement with OLGC or the Archdiocese of Newark? Where does the money get paid to? The lease says, according to the Pascack Press, Monsignor Thomas Naydigger, who is with the Archdiocese. So I assume the money will go to the Archdiocese. I'd just like to have an answer on that. Also, my next question is, the mayor says he has had no luck anywhere else. Did you ever reach out to the DPW chairperson, Councilwoman, tough name to say, but Troamuk from Hillsdale? She is the chairperson of the DPW in Hillsdale, and along with the mayor, John Rucco. Number 4, did you reach out to Bethany Church to see if they would be interested in leasing the far property sitting vacant in the back that we see utility companies parking and leaving equipment there from time to time? So this way you can possibly have a comparison with the lease. Did anybody reach out to Charlie Brown's, the restaurant? It's been sitting vacant. And I understand by public record, they're $35,000 behind in taxes. So maybe the town can negotiate the taxes to be offset and maybe have a lease comparison. I'd like to know if anybody reached out. Did anybody reach out to St. Peter Martamo Church, which was the old synagogue? They seem to have plenty of room over there. So maybe we could have gotten a comparison on a lease for over there. Did anyone reach out to Seasons to see if they would lease the TD Bank? There's a sign up that says lease. So maybe we could have reached out and got a comparison. Did anybody reach out to the shopping center? They also have a sign for lease. This could have been a comparison of a lease, maybe park the trucks in the back. Did you reach out to the new owner of the Racket Club that will be demolished soon? Maybe they want to lease it for a year or 6 months. Did anybody reach out to them? 2 more questions and I'm done. Did you reach out to anyone else to see if we can get a comparison on any price? And 2 years ago, there were trucks parked at the far side away from homes at Cherry Field. Why was it reported that you would not use Cherry Field when there were trucks parked there in the past? I'm sorry, I had more questions if I have time. Do you not think this is a conflict of interest? I'm sorry?
You have 1 minute. You have 50 seconds, Mr. Durso.
Do you think there is a conflict of interest with the mayor being a member of the church and his father sitting on the board as a finance trustee? Does this lease have to go to the planning board? The property is not town property, so it should go in front of the planning board. Plus, it is not zoned for commercial use. If this does go to the planning board, the chairman on the planning board is also a trustee of the church. Is that a conflict of interest? Is any member of the church on council? Is that a conflict of interest for them to vote? Is there an issue with insurance? Will it cost us more or will it be picked up in the lease? Where are we? Why are we doing a 2-year lease when we may only need 6 months to a year? Why don't we do 6-month leases and see where we are in 6 months? And if this does go to planning, and it may have to go to zoning. I'd just like to know the answers. Why wouldn't this have to go to planning or zoning if it's not town property? Those are my questions.
Time is up. Thank you. Your time is up, Mr. Durso.
And I'm going to eat.
Thank you, Mr. Durso.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Durso. Is there anyone else on the line? I don't see anybody else's hand raised, correct,
Neither do
Sue?
I don't see anybody either.
Could you remove Mr. Durso from the panel, please? Just to make sure it's. Okay, motion to close public comment portion.
So moved.
Second,
Wait, there's two hands-
all in
there's-
favor?
Hold on, Stacy,
Aye.
there's two hands up. There's two hands up.
There are? Okay, sorry, they weren't there.
They must have just come up.
Yeah, they just, yeah. I'm sorry, as I made the motion, I saw the hands come up, so.
Stacy, you have them?
Yeah, just, yes, good evening. There's a phone number. It ends in 6736. Could you, thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
Good evening. Just checking on my mic. Can you also hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, please state your name and address for the record.
Fantastic. Good evening. My name is Fred Mahudi. I reside at 649 Washington Avenue in Township of Washington. How's everyone doing?
Good, Mr. Mahoney. How are you?
Doing good, man. Thank you. Just a few comments that I wanted to make. So I moved to Washington Township about a little over 2 years ago. First year of residing here, just getting familiar myself with the town and how things are. As the town knows, I live directly across the street from the fire department. And for the better half of the time that I've resided in this town has been during COVID season. For over a year now, I've been working remotely from home. And my concern is honestly towards the sirens that is being used at the firehouse. Since COVID, since I've been home, the sirens go off on a daily basis in numerous times a day, sometimes twice, 3 times a day. And, it truly creates a bit of a loud noise, as you guys know, with the siren within the area. So I'm just trying to have a better understanding. If the fire department in this town is so active, why isn't there any other means for the fire members to be called in case of an emergency versus using an ancient siren that many other boroughs within the area have already shut off or temporarily dismissed because of the COVID season, given that a lot of families are being home, working from home, all the kids are home. So I'm just trying to get a better understanding of, what is the reason the siren is going off continuously. In almost half of the occasions, one member of the fire department shows up to the firehouse, opens the truck gates, pulls the trucks out. 2 minutes later, pull the trucks back in, closes the door. Everybody hang out for 5 minutes, and then everybody goes home. So if it's a true case of an emergency, the trucks aren't moving, but yet the siren's still going off. So I'm just trying to have an understanding of if the council is aware of the activity that is going on with the fire department, and if there is any better resolution that can be made, versus, like, for example, let's say we can shut off sirens for a period of 3 months and use other means of communication to call the fire department in case of an emergency, and collect some data and analyze and see whether or not truly a siren is still needed to call the fire department in case of an emergency, or there could be other systems in place where the same sort of communication can be made without having the sirens going off, and just use the siren, for example, as sort of a backup emergency system when everything is shut off, and we'll just use the sirens regarding that matter. Secondly, regarding the construction going on, so again, when the fire department is called, oftentimes the cars and the trucks are parked on grass by the lawn, or oftentimes blocking the sidewalk on Washington Avenue. And I've requested this from the fire department. I've asked them, could you please just not park the cars or the trucks on the sidewalk? So Washington Avenue is a very busy road. Oftentimes I go for a walk and I see a car just parked right on the sidewalk. So if the council can truly help address this matter in any way, shape, or fashion, I would truly appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Okay, now I really don't see anybody's hand raised, so. Okay, good.
No
Motion
hands.
to close public session.
So moved.
Second. I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
But you were seconding.
Oh, sorry. I kept watching it until Mike said it. I didn't see anybody.
Neither did I.
Okay. Mr. Pollard, is there anything, or did Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chova, about 450 Pascack that your information you're allowed to release right now?
Well, the only thing that I can release is that we do not have the appraisal yet.
Okay, thank you.
I know it's being worked on, but we do not have the appraisal.
And just again, I just want to confirm with you, just so everyone's aware of the reason for, if there's negotiations going on, we cannot comment on them at this time, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, let me say this. There haven't been negotiations. We're waiting for the appraisal.
Okay. Mr. Tova, Mr. Mayor, we have some questions again about the grant for the town.
We are working with the grant writer and the engineer for some proposed upgrades to our recreational facilities, and that's primarily where we're putting our focus for that portion of the grant. The federal grant does not allow the purchase of property for open space. It only allows for upgrades of existing facilities.
And that's the guidelines, correct?
Correct.
Is there anything else you can add about the guidelines and what the town has to follow regarding that money that's being received?
Other than the upgrade in the recreational side, we're pretty wide open as far as what we can apply for under that. So we're looking at various field improvements, trying to narrow it down to where we think we'll get, the most out of our money for that. So we're working towards that. We should have something for council, no later than the middle of next month.
Okay.
I do have some other items here if you'd like me to cover those.
Yes, if you would, please.
Just to confirm from the one caller, that is correct. Any 911 call sent via cell phone will ping off the nearest tower and go to the nearest PSAP. I can tell you from experience, it's not always the nearest one, but they do tend to bounce to other locations.
That's because it goes through, just from my understanding, because I had that question years ago, it goes through the
Well,
cell phone
unfortunately,
carrier.
our 911 system in New Jersey has never really been updated to handle cell phones.
Okay,
So that's why it does that. And until there's substantial financial upgrades to 911, that's not going to change.
thank you.
Regarding a question from a resident regarding some fire department expenditures, the one I recall is out of uniform allowance, there were 6 entries in there for payroll. Those were 6 employees of the township that are also volunteers, and that's how they're set up in our system. So therefore, that's how they were paid for that uniform allowance. To the questions regarding what else was explored for temporary DPW location, I can say that every place mentioned by the caller was explored to one level or another.
Many of those were actually discussed in previous meetings as to why we were not able to use them.
Yes.
That's correct.
Sounds
Especially,
like, watch the meetings pretty closely. I'm not
Right.
sure why that one would have been missed, but
no, and some of these items, especially Bethany, Hillsdale, the county DPW yards,
Perry Field.
Woodcliff Lake, Montvale, Westwood said affirmative no. All of those items, Mr. Durso, to respond to your question, were explored extensively by the mayor and the administrator, and everyone on the council, probably not Mr. Sears, is aware that those options were presented directly to the council, including all of the towns that you mentioned. We were informed that Seasons was not interested in leasing us the TD Bank, correct? Bethany was explored in multiple capacities, different avenues, financial, trade, you name it, that was completely explored within the conversations over the 2 years Correct, Mrs. Morgan?
Yes, actually, it was council, myself included, along with the other two council members who did not want it at Bethany. So definitely explored. You know, I don't know why that's not. Just look back on other previous council meetings and you'll see it.
And then I believe the mayor and the administrator have explored the other religious properties in town. That was also discussed and they were not interested. And also at the shopping center, that was very much explored with the landlord there also.
I just want to disagree a little bit here. All those discussions happened during closed session.
You're right, they did, but they did happen.
Yeah, but you're telling the public, they can go back and look at meetings, but all those discussions occurred during closed session, so the public is not aware of any of those. And according to Mr. Pollard, we should not be discussing anything that happens in closed session until the minutes are approved. Correct, Mr. Pollard?
Actually, Sherry Field was very public. Sherry Field, we had a bunch of callers call in.
I'm saying Bethany, all the other locations.
Councilman DeSena, please let Mrs. Morgan speak.
I cut him off. That's okay. I cut him off. I'm sorry.
Just take turns, guys, because nobody can hear each other when they're talking over one another. So go ahead, Councilman DeSena.
Mr. Pollard, you've always told us not to discuss any locations until the closed session agenda meeting minutes are approved. And here we are, we're talking about things that were totally discussed in closed session. I could have used these and talked to the public about them, and I did not. And, we can't have two sets of rules here, Mr. Pollard. So either you tell the council what the correct thing to do is, or we don't do it, or we do it. Because we can't have these things, we can't be telling the public about all these locations. They have not been brought out. The minutes have not been released, and we shouldn't be discussing them, is what I've always been told by you.
Well, okay, so it just came out tonight. I mean, they started talking about these things because it was brought up by Mr. Durso. That's correct. They shouldn't be discussed at length. There's nothing wrong with if he mentioned the thing, you could say it's considered. You shouldn't get into why you did things or how it came up and things of that nature. Mr. DeSena is right about that. But you are right.
Same two council
Just
people.
wait, Councilman DeSena, let Mr. Pollard finish, please.
Yeah, but I do want to say that if somebody from the public is bringing up 5, 6, 8 things saying you didn't do this, you didn't do that, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, when in fact we did do all that, or the council did that, you can disclose that those things that were mentioned, and he mentioned Bethany, so you can mention Bethany, and he mentioned the seasons, so you can mention seasons. He mentioned whatever, so you could say it was considered. And in addition, from what I gather, and I wasn't part of this, there was even public meetings or meetings between people and residents around Sherry Field and the location at Hudson that council people were at and wasn't in closed session. It was like out in the public. So, I mean, there's, you're right, Mike, that not you got to be careful and not let things get out that come out of closed session. So this one's kind of like going up to the line, and that's why it's a little bit strange.
Can I just say
So,
something?
yeah, go ahead, Councilwoman Morgan, yes.
So my whole thing is, if you don't address it, Mr. Durso brought something up under a false veil. Then, if we're saying if we're not kind of rebutting the fact that we did have conversations, it appears to everyone else listening that he's correct, that we haven't explored all of these things.
No, I agree. That's why I said for every one that he brought up, you have an absolute duty to respond that it was considered. All I'm saying is it's preferable not to get into the rationale, the nitty gritty, that kind of stuff. But there's nothing wrong with saying it was considered.
Right, which Councilwoman Morgan and I have said that all of the options mentioned by Mr. Durso absolutely were considered and explored, and they were brought in conversation to the council. However,
just don't get into. Just say they were looked at. They were explored. They were not ignored. And you can mention each one of them, but I wouldn't go,
I do want to add something though to Mr. Durso's comment about Sherry Fields. I think it was a little bit insensitive to say that there's been trucks parked there before. Why not now? There's residents who spoke up about their quality of life. That I'm sure that was very public. It was mentioned in the papers and multiple times in our council meetings. So what if Sherry Field were located by Viola Terrace? You know, that you would have we've parked trucks there prior. So let's just continue to do that. We have to be neighborly. So I just felt that wasn't really, strong argument to continue to park our trucks there.
And the main thing too is the part of the council meeting is disseminating the truth and not allowing for false information to be put out to the public when that's actually what's being stated is not fact.
Right.
Do any of the other Councilman Castillo, do you have any comments regarding that? Give everybody a fair shake here. Especially since you've been on the council longer than other people?
There are things that we talk about in closed session that absolutely cannot be spoken about. Okay, absolutely. And we are advised by our township attorney, and he only gives advice. We don't have to follow his advice. Okay, and a lot of times I butt heads with Ken. All right, but we do have to consider it. But the fact of the matter is this: if stuff is said in closed session, details, you cannot discuss it publicly. It cannot be brought out by any member in that chamber, whether it's a council person, a clerk, or the mayor, or the administrator. Okay, so you have to be very, very careful when you talk about stuff in closed session. You can talk in generalities, very general terms, but when you get specific, then there's an issue. And I think some things were said and stated that were in closed session that were very specific that should have stayed there. And that's all I'm going to say. We discussed a lot of possibilities. We talked a lot about a lot of things, going to different places. Now, the point is this: when you talk about that stuff as a council, there's a lot of stuff we can do, but it's up to the mayor and the administration to carry out those conversations and report back to the council. Whether the administration did that or they didn't, I have no idea to verify it or deny that it happened. I can only go what we're told by. So when we talk about all these negotiations that go on, I don't know if they happen for a fact. But again, things that are said in closed session has to be kept, and you can talk about the generalities out in public if it's brought up by a member of the public, as Mr. Pollard said. But it has to be very, very generalized. We can't go into detail. And that's all I'll say about that particular subject. Thank you, Ms. Feeney.
And also, we need to keep in mind that the mayor and the administration keeps us informed of what they're doing. We hold the purse strings, so they can
they are required.
Sorry, Councilman Castillo, but
they are required to keep us informed because we're just having a discussion. Thank you.
So we do hold the purse strings, and if after the mayor and the administrator do not get the votes from the council, they can't move forward with the plans. So that's also something that needs to be kept in mind by the public too, is that since the mayor does the negotiating and the council holds the purse strings, it is a collaboration that needs to happen. And Councilman Sear, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and we did keep it very general. Unfortunately, under the false veil that later on it'll be said again that, we're not answering questions, we're being vague about things, but please, for public watching, it is 100%, as Councilman Castillo said, we can't discuss in detail, but to be, broad about it, yes, everything that every suggestion Mr. Durso made, we explored very in depth.
Yeah, and thoroughly. And if someone on the council wasn't sure if further negotiations happened, they absolutely should have inquired to the mayor and the administrator. So, Councilman Sears.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any comments regarding
it's been an ongoing problem between the fire department and the gentleman across the street. The first incident, we don't control what the fire call comes into the fire department. So when we respond to a fire call, we can get to the firehouse, and by the time the police get there or a senior officer, they can tell us it was a false alarm. But when the call comes in over an automatic alarm, we have to respond because that's how the call gets broadcast to us through the desk. So, yeah, we get there and naturally we get called off. That's the nature of the fire department. We get calls like that. The siren, we actually are required. There's still some old laws that require us to maintain a fire siren. We'll have to go and relook at those laws again. The siren basically should not go off until 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. You know, we have a daytime fire crew and we have a nighttime fire crew from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And we have turned the sirens off from 24/7 down to that 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Call. And as far as parking on the property across the street, there is no other property for us to park. And 9 times out of 10, there might be a bumper oversticking the sidewalk, but the firemen don't intentionally park, on the sidewalk across the street. They stay on the lawn. And the other alternative is to park along the fence line like the construction crew do, and that's where we park. So, it's the nature of the beast we live in. There are newer technology. During the day, we have very limited manpower. So the sirens go off during the day. We have a lot of people in town that are landscapers. They may not hear the pager go off, but they do hear the siren going off. So there is some limitations on what we can do. But besides that, the fire department is doing the best job they can to stay off the main street. And I'm sure if the chief is listening, he'll reinforce, don't block the sidewalk if this gentleman, is walking back and forth up the street. I mean, I'll make sure that the chief gets that message. Thank you.
Very much, Mr. Sears. Regarding Ms. Sopkowitz's comments, it's interesting to get the history back on 450 Pascack, knowing that she was trying to also do it, and this probably could be an ongoing process. I think that the allegations against the Calamares and the improprieties is uncalled for, and it's just dredging up dirt on people that's not warranted. The negotiations, everybody knows the Archdiocese of Newark holds all control regarding to property because it's not owned technically by the church that it sits on. It's regulated, managed, everything comes from the Archdiocese. And that's all the comments I have. Vice President Morgan?
No, that's it, Stace. I agree. I mean, I thought that was public knowledge, but.
Councilman Cassia, any other comments?
Not at this time.
Councilman DeSena?
Yes, Council President Feeney. Thank you, Mrs. Sopkowitz, for your history lesson. The Bethany purchase would have been a beautiful purchase if we could have gotten 4 council people back on that administration to say yes. It would have been a gem of the township. We could have used it for a multitude of things. We could have had a senior center for our teens and a better senior center, a place for our teens to go, a beautiful pool. It would have been a gem, but unfortunately that didn't come to fruition. The swim club purchase, I've been getting a lot of calls about it. Even if we purchase it, you will not automatically be a member of the pool. You still have to join the pool. So for all the residents that think that once the town purchases the pool, they have free access to the pool, that is not the case. So I just want to let the residents know that.
Most towns though, sorry, even though, correct me if I'm wrong, but if with the pools, aren't you have to still join even though you're in that town, like Woodcliff Lake and Saddle River?
But it's a minimal amount, not what.
No, right. Well, actually, Woodcliff Lake has gotten very high for residents.
They also spent $3.5 million to renovate the pool, so they have a lot of.
Right, I know. I'm just saying, you still have to join. You still have to join.
People are under the impression, the calls I've been getting, if we buy the pool, you're automatically a member. That is not the case, unfortunately. So
I mean, that's a lovely,
it's a lovely thought, but it's not. It's not so Mr. Udita, yes, you heard from Mr. Poller. Mr. Ferrara, a lot of great points. I was saddened when I watched the April 5th meeting. We've canceled meetings with missing council people for less with all these important topics on the agenda. I thought it would have been great to have that meeting postponed so that Dr. Cassio and I could have, been at the meeting and been able to discuss the topics that were passed that night. I'd also like to talk about the $901,000 that we received as a federal grant. The $901,000 that we received as the federal grant that Mr. Gottheimer worked so hard to get us that for all our municipalities. We should be reviewing multiple things. That equals, that 900,000 equals 2 years of garbage pickup for every resident in this town. We could put out a contract right now based on the numbers that Mr. Tovo and Mr. Calamari have provided to us, and we could pay for garbage pickup for 2 years. The garbage situation is atrocious. I have garbage cans on our streets every day of the week now. It is disgusting. Talk about a quality of life issue. So Mr. Ferraro, the 900,000 should be spent. This council should be pushing that we direct the administration to spend that money to pay for garbage for the next 2 years and not raise taxes in doing so. Mr. Ullman, I hope you get your answers soon. Mr. Durso, you are correct. We did let PSE&G use Sherry Field for 6 months to do the gas main relocation work throughout the township and the borough of Westwood. And unfortunately, Mrs. Morgan, trucks are parked facing Viola Court. Our town trucks are parked behind the Valley Bank, and they are facing Viola Court. So unfortunately, Mr. Durso is looking at trucks. So that's all I have for tonight, Mrs. Feeney.
Stacy, you're muted.
Stacy, you're muted. Stacy, you're muted.
Sorry, I just want to reiterate that I do ask prior to the meetings if anybody's not going to be at a meeting to please let me know ahead of time. However, several times I've received day of or day before outside of family emergencies, mind you, but people who did know they were going to be away. Mr. Mayor or Mr. Tovo, do you have any additional comments?
I do, please, yes. I don't remember us really ever considering buying where Bethany is now. I remember, like Janet said, us thinking about buying their old location. However, I would throw out that they wanted over $2 million, and that was for not even 2 acres of property. The swim club is over 6 acres of property, and right now we have a negotiated price of $850,000. Also, that building would have needed, in my opinion, a lot of retrofitting to fit it for any municipal use. It was a church and a community center, so I don't see how it could have been converted with no work to an ambulance corps. It had no garage bays or anything like that. My comments on DPW parking off-site, I have a little prepared speech that I'd like to read when we get it to that ordinance, so I'll save that until then. As far as myself and the mayor of Hillsdale looking at Bethany, the only thing, it's maybe more than it seems. I talked to the mayor of Hillsdale on a regular basis. He said that they were just looking at doing a community center, but were in a bind until they could do it. I said to him, oh, we have a great partnership with Bethany. You should take a look at it. That's the extent of what happened between myself and the mayor of Hillsdale on that topic. So, I want to put to rest that, we're doing anything with Hillsdale or anything like that as a partnership on Bethany. And I think everything else pretty much is off-site parking for DPW. So I'll wait for the ordinance reading on that. Thank you.
You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
You're still muted, Stace.
Still muted.
Honestly, I unmuted myself and I have no idea what happened. Probably unmuted, remuted. Okay, so Mr. Tovo, regarding Mr. Ullman's 2 questions, I know you just answered them, but could you email me so I could email him back, please?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Mr. Tovo, do you have any additional comments?
One for the last caller, we do understand the limited parking associated with the firehouse construction. I am working with the fire director and DPW to try to alleviate some of that.
Okay, thank you.
That's all I
Mr.
have.
Pollard, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I have some things. First, I do want to say that the lease for the DPW equipment, vehicles, whatever, that's with the Archdiocese of Newark. It's not with OLGC, even though OLGC is on the lease. I've been dealing with the real estate project manager, Office of Property Management at Archdiocese of Newark. Also with the attorney for the Archdiocese. We had to use the Archdiocese form of document. So it really is an Archdiocese situation. It's also, there's a lease for 2 years, but it has a 30-day cancellation clause in favor of the township. So it can get out in 30 days notice, if I remember that correctly. So,
That's correct.
yeah. And so we're not locked in for 2 years. So I wanted to get that there. Now I did want to spend some time, and I hope you'll give me some time to talk about the vacancy and the filling of the vacancy and things of that nature. Okay.
Yes.
Which I'm going to kind of go into a little bit. So, and it may be maybe a little long, but please bear with me because everybody thinks that these questions that come up are easy to answer, but they're not. They're very complicated because there's a lot of laws, a lot of cases, and a lot of interactions. And I think if anybody would have said what might have happened at that meeting, probably nobody would have said what happened actually happened. So it's not as straightforward as you think. So just bear with me and I'll try to answer all the questions. Try to prepare a little something. So, all right. So Mr. Durso has asked several questions, made many statements about the vacancy caused by the resignation of Councilman Cumming and the unfortunate event of his passing. And the filling of that vacancy, I'll try to answer them. Like many situations which occur in the operation of government, as well as society in general, we would prefer things to be black and white. However, that is not always the case. There are hundreds of thousands, or should I say millions of cases throughout the country where there are at least two, if not many more interpretations of what we call the law. So we start out with the fact that you have the governing body, the council. That council is made up of people, some elected as candidates for a political party, some elected who are unaffiliated. And when one of these elected council people resigns or leaves office, there is a vacancy. And the New Jersey legislature enacted a law called the Municipal Vacancy Law. And I quoted that before. It's actually 23 sections, 23 different sections of that law. In doing so, the New Jersey legislature recognized that a vacancy of an elected council person from a political party should be handled differently than an elected council person who is not from a political party. And so the main statutory reference for that is NJSA 40A 1611, appointment to fill a vacancy where the incumbent was a nominee of a political party. Okay, I just want to read it because I think it should be out there because a lot of misinformation goes out there. Says, if the incumbent whose office has become vacant was elected to office as the nominee of a political party, the municipal committee of the political party of which the incumbent was the nominee shall, no later than 15 days after the occurrence of the vacancy, present to the governing body the names of 3 nominees. Remember that word, nominees, for the selection of a successor to fill the vacancy. The governing body shall, within 30 days after the occurrence of the vacancy, appoint one of the nominees as the successor to fill the vacancy. If the governing body fails to appoint one of the nominees within the time prescribed, the municipal committee that named the 3 nominees shall, within the next 15 days, appoint one of the nominees as the successor to fill the vacancy, and such person shall be sworn in immediately. The rest of the statute doesn't really apply to this situation. There's a different statute that deals with appointments that where the vacancy is from a person who is not affiliated. That's 40A 1612, appointment to fill vacancy where incumbent was not a nominee of a political party. So clearly that doesn't apply. Here, Mr. Cummings was a councilman elected as a candidate of the Republican Party. The statute provided that the municipal committee of the political party of which the incumbent was the nominee, the Republican County Committee, had to present 3 names to the council to fill the vacancy. And by the way, I say county committee. It's really the municipal committee, but it's referred to colloquially as the county committee. Everybody knows it's the county, referred to as the county committee. So the county committee in Washington Township submitted a letter to the clerk with the names of Mr. Robert Stickle, Mr. Thomas Sears, and Mr. Victor Fedini. Okay. Now, a municipal committee is not part of the township government. It is not a governmental agency. I know Mr. Durso had made a lot of requests for voting procedures, voting records, and whatnot. The town has nothing to do with that. I don't know that that stuff's even available, but it certainly is not available to the town. We don't have access to it. We don't get involved with the political process of any political party, whether that's Republican, Democratic, Independent, or whatever. So we have no control over that. And there is nothing in the municipal vacancy law that allows anyone to get into the operations of the county committee. It only says what the county committee do. Have to come up with the 3 names. They're the repository to decide. If the council can't decide, I'll go back to them, subject to what I'm going to bring up a little later. Okay, so the role of the county committee is spelled out in the municipal vacancy law. First, the county committee selects 3 nominees for the filling of the vacancy, and it presents them to the council in a list. That was done. The same section of the law says that if the governing body does not appoint one of the nominees, the municipal committee that named the 3 nominees shall, within the next 15 days, appoint one of the nominees as the successor to fill the vacancy, and such person shall be sworn in immediately.
Mr. Pollard, can you explain what you mean when it says that the governing body will appoint? It means what? That the governing body will...
The appoint means select. In other words, when you're making the appointment to that vacancy, but subject to its vote. Okay. Now, I saw from the letter from the county committee that was provided to the council and to me and to the council by the clerk that Mr. Stickle was listed first, then Mr. Sears, and then Mr. Fedini. And I wanted to make it fair so that no council person could jump in and get a name put on first and possibly be selected before others could be filled just by virtue of somebody throwing in a nomination, right? Michael, you're laughing, okay, right? So I discussed that with the clerk, and I said, I have a solution to this.
I'm sorry, I wasn't laughing at that meeting. I was laughing at tonight's meeting at Mr. Sears' appointment to the planning board.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So I had the clerk write the name of each person on a blank piece of paper. I told her the day of the meeting that she's to put the names, jumble them up, face down, and then she would pick a name, and that would be the first name that would be, brought up. Okay. Okay. Now, so everybody had an equal chance of being picked first or second or whatever, and then the election was held on March 25th. Okay. So it should be noted that since the names were selected and presented by the county committee, each was available for a vote. So the nomination process might not even have been a requirement. Remember, the nominees, the action of the nominees was really done by the county committee. They nominated those people. And there could have been just a vote without going through any procedures of nominations and seconds and things like that. Okay, but the council did have nominations, and Mr. Stickle was picked first by the clerk, and Councilwoman Feeney nominated him. There was no second. I'll talk about that a little later. Then Mr. Sears' name was picked. There was a nomination, a second, and a vote, which resulted in a 2-2 tie. The same thing then happened with the third name on the list, Mr. Fedini, another tie. So there was no candidate who received 3 votes as required by a different section of the municipal vacancy law, NJSA 4816-7. Because you needed 3 votes, 3 council votes to have the vacancy filled by the council. Okay.
So, Mr. Pollard, no one on the council.
Wait one second, Stacy. Okay, 1 second. Okay, and I'll answer your question in a second. So but for anything else, there having been nobody with 3 council votes, it would have gone back to the county committee for the county committee to select the person that they wanted from the list of 3. Okay.
Mr. Pollard?
I'll tell you what, do me a favor. Let me finish.
I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
You know what's going to happen? A lot of questions are going to come up.
Go ahead.
What about this? What about that? What about, so let me finish.
Go ahead, Mr. Pollard.
Okay. Sorry. What I tried to do is kind of cover what I think is going to be questions. Okay.
Sure.
All right. Now, so normally it would go back to the county committee. However, in the same vacancy law, there was another section. And like I said, there were 23 sections, which is entitled Authority of the Mayor to Vote in Filling a Vacancy. And that was NJSA 40A 16.8, which provides in municipalities governed by the provisions of Article 3 or 16A of the optional municipal charter law, and the sections are there, or by the provisions of the law governing boroughs, they cite the law, inclusive, a mayor shall be permitted to vote to fill a vacancy in the membership of a governing body only in the case of a tie. Now, Mr. Durso said that's not the law, but clearly it is the law. That section is in there. There's a whole history about it. And it does give the mayor the authority to get involved, even though the norm is that he doesn't have to. Well, he doesn't have to get involved. The statute said he may. He is not required to vote. Okay. And there's been talk that it doesn't apply to the Faulkner government, but the statute that they're citing to, the optional municipal charter law, is the Faulkner government. And the Faulkner government, Mr. Durso also mentions it doesn't apply to Faulkner Form E. Now, for those people who are not familiar with that, the term Faulkner, because it's not a usual term, came from actually, he was the mayor of Montclair, Bayard Faulkner. He was the chairman of the 1950 Commission on Municipal Government, and the legislation was named after him. So the optional municipal charter law is called the Faulkner Act in reference to him. Now, under the optional municipal charter law, just for reference, there are 4 forms of government. There's mayor council, council manager, mayor council administrator, and small municipality. The Township of Washington became a mayor and council form of government under the optional municipal charter law, I believe in the 1960s or 70s, if I'm not mistaken. In 1981, the Faulkner Act was significantly amended, and I believe that Section E was repealed, and some other options were given, but there were changes in the Faulkner law. But the bottom line is that we are still a mayor council form of government. It is still under the optional municipal charter law, and that provision of the vacancy law, which I cited, does apply under the Faulkner Act. Okay, just want to get that clear. Dr. Cassie, I think you had raised it too, if I'm not mistaken. I just wanted to clear that up because I remember you had disagreed with that, and understandably so. But there's so much on it that says that it applies to the Faulkner government. And even in the Faulkner government itself, the statutes, not even the vacancy law, there's a section in there which talks about the mayor not being able to vote except if there's a vacancy arising from a tie under 4069A 41B. And that was enacted in 1950. Okay, now since this section of the municipal vacancy law applies to our form of government, the mayor was permitted, but not required. He was permitted, but not required to and the wording is to vote to fill the vacancy in the membership of the governing body. And that's the wording that came into play, a vote to fill the vacancy. So interpretation of the law came in at that point, and that's where things can happen in terms of how people are looking at different sections and the interactions and how you apply wording. Okay, for example, and these are only some examples of what could have the interpretations. Okay, so the law could be interpreted by the view that the mayor could vote to fill the vacancy regardless of how the council voted, as long as there was a tie. There's nothing that says it's breaking the tie. The law could be interpreted that he could vote for any nominee on the list put forth by the municipal county committee, and not just those that were voted on by the council. The law could be interpreted that he could vote along with council members and that his vote would count the same as theirs. It's another one. The law could be interpreted that he could break the tie, although there was no wording that says his vote only counts to break the tie. So when I looked at that night when it happened, and it was in front of me, I viewed the wording that night that said that the mayor was permitted to vote to fill a vacancy in the membership of a governing body. I interpreted that, or felt that that meant that it gave the mayor the authority by his vote to fill the vacancy. And he could have voted for anybody, but the mayor indicated his preference was for Mr. Stickle, and he voted for him. Okay. Now, I do want to talk about the idea that, because I'm sure we'll talk about it, when the mayor's authority came up, there was a discussion that Mr. Stickle did not receive a second. Okay. However, as I mentioned before, the Municipal County Committee submitted his name in the list as a nominee, which comported with the municipal vacancy law. The county committee had to present to the governing body the names of 3 nominees. So they were already nominees, and there could have been just straight votes on everybody. Okay. So there was a real question about the whole nomination process itself. It also should be noted that under Robert's rules, which does have some application to the way council operates, a nomination is a second is not required for nomination. Okay. And so when the mayor voted for Mr. Stickle, I felt that he was entitled to vote for Mr. Stickle, even though there was not a second per se, for all of those reasons about what I've just laid out. Okay. So what we had after the election process was 2 votes for and against Mr. Sears, 2 votes for and against Mr. Fedini, and the mayor's vote for Mr. Stickle, which, if we follow the interpretation that the mayor's vote to fill the vacancy in the membership of the governing body was authority for Mr. Stickle to be the successor to the vacancy, that would have ended the process. Okay. Now, after the meeting that night and continuing to the next day, I continued to think through all the permutations of the election process. It bothered me that no interpretation was 100% in my mind, and I'll readily admit that. I went back to all the statutes, reread all the cases that I had found about the municipal vacancy law, and there are not many. I wanted to get it right. So after a lot of thought, I felt on balance that the interpretation most consistent with all of the statutes and the cases was the one where the mayor's vote would count as another council vote, 1 vote, although there was no language to that effect. If he cast it in favor of one of the nominees who had received 2 votes, then that nominee would be the successor. The mayor was clear that he wanted Mr. Stickle as opposed to the other 2 nominees. And I believe that he was authorized to cast his vote for Mr. Stickle as a nominee, or not cast a vote at all. So we were left with no nominee having received a majority of all the votes. And the municipal vacancy law does speak about an appointment to fill a vacancy in the membership of a governing body shall be by a majority vote of the remaining members of the governing body. And so the following day, as you all know, I advised the clerk in writing, right? And I asked her to so advise the council that due to the confusion of the proceedings the previous night, and in light of the fact that no nominee received a majority of votes to be the successor, the matter should be referred back to the county committee for action under the main section of the municipal vacancy law, which states if the governing body fails to appoint one of the nominees, the municipal committee that named the 3 nominees shall within the next 15 days appoint one of the nominees as the successor to fill the vacancy, and such person shall be sworn in immediately. That's that section 11 again. Thereafter, the Republican Municipal Committee appointed Mr. Sears from the list of nominees to fill the vacancy, and he was sworn in immediately. Now, Mr. Durso apparently felt that a list of 3 names should have been given back to the council for action, but that's not what the municipal vacancy law provides. And there is a case that does talk about this, that once the initial list is presented, that is the list to be used. There is no requirement for any further list, no necessity for any further list. That is the list that governs. Okay. All right. Don't worry, I'm getting to the end here. I know this is pretty involved stuff, and it's easy to latch on to one approach or one question or one facet of it when you look at one word, one section, one law, and a host of laws and a few interpretive cases. But in the end, as no one nominee from the list submitted by the Municipal County Committee received a majority of all available votes, the action of the Municipal County Committee was proper under the main section of the municipal vacancy law. So I hope I answered all the questions. And I mean, I could sit and we could argue about, how you feel about it or anybody else feels about it. But that's basically how it came to be that the Municipal County Committee did select the final nominee from the list of nominees, and that was Mr. Sears, who did get 2 votes from 2 of the council people.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. I think that was a comprehensive explanation.
Question time or?
Wait, can you guys hear me or no?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, sorry. We just didn't see.
So,
Well, I had one question first, Councilman Casio.
go ahead.
So my question was, so no one, just to clarify, no one from the council or the administration or the mayor was nominated any of the 3 that you mentioned, correct?
I'm sorry, what? I didn't understand that question.
No one from the council to the mayor to the administrator gave the nominees. It came from the town.
Oh, that came totally from the county committee. Nobody was involved. Nobody from the council was involved. The mayor wasn't involved. I wasn't involved. The administrator wasn't involved. And as a matter of fact, the only involvement that we have is when we got the letter. That was the first involvement. And the clerk was advised to tell the county committee what had happened and ask them to proceed. And the county committee does their own thing, and we're not involved with the county committee at all.
Thank you, because I
And
did receive
I don't believe they're subject to Oprah even as their own. They're not a governmental agencies. I don't believe they're subject to Oprah, but they certainly, you can't Oprah their voting and all that stuff through the township. That's for sure.
Thank you, because I did receive a call from a few residents who wanted to know why we didn't nominate this one and why we didn't nominate somebody else. And
Yeah,
I said,
that clearly
don't
is
make
not
the
the function of the council or the mayor or the administrator or the town. That's clear.
Councilman Casio.
Yes, Mr. Pollard. It's my understanding that after the county committee submits the names, the council has 15 days from that time to make a decision on the list of 3. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then I'd like to know why you thought it was necessary to send it back to the county committee the following Monday or the following day after the council meeting.
Well, because the mayor did act and did cast his vote. And
But you said that was a non-issue because you should not have done it.
Councilman Casio, please let him finish.
Because the election was held, and in my mind, once the election was held, the election was held.
But you can vote multiple times on council members. It wasn't a one and done. It could have came back numerous times. Like Ms. Morgan asked, why couldn't we discuss or talk to these candidates? Though we probably couldn't do it anyway, but she did have that thought. And I think that would have clarified in her mind. So in my mind, the council had 15 days past the actual presentation of the 3 names to act on it. So it should not have gone back to the county committee the following day, the Tuesday, in which you sent it back, which does not follow the statute.
Okay,
that's where I have an issue with it.
Okay, and I understand. You couldn't have had an issue then. You had an issue afterwards. So my view is that the election took place. And let me finish. And I will say this, under Robert's rules as well, once the election takes place, that is the election. And this was the election. I mean, it was an election.
It's not an election. Does it say an election in the statute?
It's an election. I mean,
Mr. Pollard, in an election, there's a set
Councilman
time.
Casio, if you'd like him to answer the questions, please let him finish.
Ms. Feeney, we're adults. We can have a discussion.
I understand.
No one can hear you.
It's okay. It's all right. I felt that the action had taken place, particularly since the mayor took action to appoint somebody, and the interpretation at that point in time was that the appointment was made, and Mr. Stickle was appointed.
Okay, so you interpret the appointment as an election.
Well,
And there's a finite. One second. There's a finite date with an appointment.
It doesn't matter whether you say election or not election. The proceeding itself, I felt was finished once the mayor cast his vote, in my interpretation.
But if it was finished, Mr. Pollard, if it was finished, then Mr. Stickle would be on the dais with us right now.
Yeah, except that he resigned.
He was never appointed.
He withdrew his name.
But that's not what we were told.
I understand that, but he did.
But according to your dissertation you just gave us on what occurred, he was the selected candidate by the mayor.
He was.
So he resigned?
He
Mr.
did
Stickle
resign.
resigned?
He withdrew his name. You weren't aware of that?
Well, I didn't see a resignation letter. If he was elected by the mayor and there was a resignation, there should be a letter, right?
I believe.
So once he's elected, you can't withdraw. That's a resignation.
Well,
but I didn't see a resignation letter.
Okay, well here's the thing again. What I'm saying to you is.
Because then we should get 3 more names, Mr. Pollard.
No, I'm sorry.
Because he resigned. No, there's a vacancy there then.
Okay, but I'm saying to you that there is a case that talks about no new list comes in. It's the same list.
That's okay.
Yeah,
but
you're not, Mr. Pollard, what you're not understanding is you just said that Robert's rules, Mr. Stickle was appointed by the mayor and his appointment stood.
Except for the fact that I felt that my...
Wait a minute, but in your dissertation...
it happened.
You said it happened. Once the mayor appointed Mr. Stickle, he was our new appointee. So if he withdrew if he resigned from that, then we got to get 3 more names from the Republican committee.
Was he sworn in? Was he sworn in?
No, he was not sworn in.
But he resigned, we're being told.
So
you're not actually letting him finish? If you would please let him finish.
What I said to you, what I'm saying to you, and I thought I was clear, but maybe I wasn't clear. That night, I felt that my interpretation was not the favored interpretation, and that he was not really the chosen person who filled the vacancy. I felt that, on balance, that the mayor's vote was 1 vote, and there was nobody that got 3 votes. That I spent a fair amount of time talking about that.
Mr. Pollard, action was taken that night, correct? Action was taken that night, correct?
Yes, I'm not saying it wasn't taken.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
When we left the meeting that night, Mr. Pollard, we were told that Mr. Stickle would have been sworn in the next morning.
Except that I did say that I felt, and I didn't do it until the night, when the night was over. Obviously, I was trying to interpret the law and all the laws that night, correct? And the next day, I felt that it was not the best interpretation, and that the better interpretation was that it would go back to the county committee under the main law.
But you're contradicting yourself when you said that it now goes back and it was an election, it was held, correct? But why couldn't it was a one and done? Now why wouldn't we go back to the council, and you had 15 days to take that list again and vote on it? So you can't play it both sides.
I understand. I felt that it should go back to the county committee. I'm
glad Mr. Sears is on. Don't get me wrong, Tom. Welcome back. Nice to see you again. But there's a process, and the process has to be followed as strictly as we can. And I know there's very, very little case law on it, but the law does say, it's very, very specific, that if it doesn't get resolved after 15 days with the council, then it goes back to county committee. You remanded it back to the county committee the following day.
How do you know that? How would you know he sent it back the following day?
No, I did.
Because he did. He sent the letter.
How do you know that, though? We weren't.
I wrote it. No, I wrote an email saying.
You sent the email.
Wait a minute, one at a time, please. I can't follow you people.
I sent an email to everyone, but I felt that the proceedings with the council was concluded, and that it would go back to the county committee because the council had acted, and there was a tie.
But there wasn't a tie, Mr. Pollard. The mayor selected. Based on your recommendation, the mayor selected Mr. Stickle, and we were told that night that Mr. Stickle would be sworn in the next morning. And then you had a change of heart that night and changed that. But according to what we were told the night in front of the public, that Mr. Stickle was nominated by the mayor, and would be appointed the next morning. So if
And
he had to,
also,
I'm speaking, Mr. Feeney, if he had to resign in order for Mr. Sears to take that spot, then there was a resignation, and he needs 3 more votes. We need 3 new names.
but also Mr. Pollard did say after that part of the meeting that he was going to go back and look at the law. That was part of the conversation if you go back and rewatch the meeting.
Wait a second. Mike, Mr. DeSanto, let me just say one thing. I made a ruling that night, no question, and I felt it was the correct ruling when I made it. But I felt it was not the correct wording, correct ruling that night after the meeting. I'm saying it to you again for the 4th time. And that night I went and reread all of the cases and reread all the statutes and took to heart all of the interpretations, and which was better. And you know what? My interpretation might have been fine. And the resignation of Mr. Stickler had nothing to do with what I did, because I believe I didn't find out about that until after I had done what I did. So his resignation had nothing to do with anything. I felt that his appointment was not a valid appointment, and therefore it should go back to the county committee.
But years ago, the same thing happened, and we got multiple names. In looking when this happened years ago, when there was a vacancy on the council, after the 3 names failed, the council was given 3 other new names. So how is that different when you back to now?
You know, one thing I try not to do is what happened 10 years ago. I don't know what happened 10 years ago about.
Oh, you do, because you were here.
I know that, but I don't remember everything from 10 years ago or 30 years ago. I don't know that you do, but maybe you do. I don't know. But I don't remember every single thing that happened. And frankly, I'm not really that interested in what happened before. I'm more interested in getting it right of what the laws are today. So I try to look at the current laws, like Mr. Dorso was talking about Faulkner Form E, which was repealed. I'm trying to go with the current law, the current interpretations, the current statutes, amendments, and that's what I did.
Okay, thank you.
So to Ms. Morgan's point, back in the original vote, it would be nice to, when there's nominations, okay, that we at least get an opportunity as council people to at least discuss them in detail, okay? Maybe look at their background, where they come from, because it's hard to pick someone out if you're not familiar with them. Now, I know Mr. Ferdini for a very long time, since I was a youngster, and I know Mr. Sears for a while. We've worked together numerous times. And Mr. Stickle, he lives across the block basically from me, so I know these people. But when you don't know these people, it's hard to get a feel of who these people are. And they're all fine individuals. But, you want to get a sense. And I think, going forward, when this situation occurs, because it will occur again, that we are at least allotted the 15 days to make a decision. It doesn't have to be made right away. That's why the law gives you 30 days to fill a vacancy. That is the law. That is the law. You have 30 days to make a choice, in essence. And it would be nice to have that 30-day leeway to, at least vet these people somewhat. And that's all I'm going to say. But I will say, welcome, Tom. Welcome to America's dream or nightmare, whatever you would like to consider it. Thank you, Mr. Pollard.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Power. We're going to move on now to keep the meeting moving along. Okay, so we have on ordinance 2104, an ordinance authorizing the acquisition of certain properties needed for public use in connection with the Washington Avenue and Pascack Road intersection project. Resolution number 21-183, authorizing second reading and opening of the public hearing for ordinance 2104. I'll make a motion. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Sue, roll call.
Councilman Casio,
Yes.
Councilman DeSena,
Yes.
Councilwoman Morgan,
Yes.
Councilman Sears,
You're on mute, Tom.
Tom,
Just give me a thumbs up.
Yes.
Council President Feeney.
Yes, thank you. Okay, please click the link below to participate in the public hearing. The topic for this portion of the public hearing is the Resolution 21-183, authorizing second reading and opening of the public hearing for ordinance 2104. No other discussion is permitted at this time.
I do not see any hands up.
I do.
Nope, now we do.
Mr. Ferrara, would you please unmute your, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Ferrara. Could you please state your name and address?
2556 Cleveland Avenue.
Yes. What
Is
can we
this
do?
the ordinance, is this the ordinance about purchasing, renting the DPW facility?
No, it's not.
It's the one about purchasing the property?
No, it's about the acquisition of the property to complete the intersection.
That's okay, that's what I meant. Is this $158,000? And also, is this all the property? Or you're still negotiating for other properties? That's all I had.
It's not all the
Mr.
property.
Sorry, say that again?
It's not all the properties.
Not all the properties.
It's most of them.
It's one of them,
Well, it's actually 6 of them.
but with one owner.
Yeah, but it's 6 different lots and.
I know, it's
yeah.
one owner.
Mr. Farrar, do you have any other questions?
Not on that one.
Thank you.
The other hand disappeared, it looks like.
Yeah, okay. I don't see anybody else. Motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Or
Aye.
let's do roll
Aye.
call, actually, sorry.
Okay, Councilman Casio,
Yes.
Councilman DeSena,
Yes.
Councilwoman Morgan,
Yes.
Councilman Sears,
Yes.
Council President Feeney.
Yes. Ordinance number 21-05, an ordinance authorizing the
Stacy,
renting.
excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
Motion to adopt ordinance 2104 at second reading by title.
Yeah, Sue, I don't have that in my papers.
It's on your agenda.
Not, actually.
How can it not be on your agenda?
I don't know.
On mine.
You know, mine, at the bottom of page 3, it's blurred, it got like blurred. Could you just read it?
Yeah, no
Is it the
problem.
same as the first one? It's motion to adopt ordinance number 21-04 at second
Yes.
reading by title. I'll make a
Yes.
motion. I have a second. Okay.
Second.
Sue, roll call?
Councilman Casio,
Yes.
Councilman DeSena,
Yes.
Councilwoman Morgan,
Yes.
Councilman Sears,
Yes.
Council President Feeney.
Yes. Ordinance number 21-05, an ordinance authorizing the renting and use of 35 parking spaces by the Township of Washington from Our Lady of Good Counsel. Resolution number 21-184, authorizing second reading and opening of the public hearing for ordinance 21-05. I'll make a motion. May I have a second?
Second.
Sue?
Councilman Casio,
We discussed
Yes.
it.
Well, I was going to open the public hearing and then after we do the next one, then discuss it like we should.
That's fine.
Councilman DeSena,
Yes.
Councilwoman Morgan,
Yes.
Councilman Sears,
Yes.
Council President Feeney.
Yes. Okay, please click the link below to participate in the public hearing. I see Mr. Ferrara. I don't see Mr. Ferrara.
There's that 899 number again,
Yeah, but he doesn't have his hand raised.
12 different digits.
Yeah, where did Mr. Ferrara go?
He's
He
there.
lowered his hand.
No, Mr. Ferrara's hand is up and Mr. Allman's hand is up.
Stacy, which one you want to go with?
Good evening, Mr. Allman. Could you please state your name and address for the record, and also would you unmute your microphone?
Yes, Michael Ullman, 2 Clark Avenue.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Allman. This is in regards to renting the 35 parking spaces.
Yes. This is the right portion of the meeting for that?
Yeah, yes, it is.
Thank you. Regarding addendum number 3 or point 3 of the addendum, Has the zoning official opined on the use of the parking at the facility? And is that a permitted use? Addendum number 5, the unforeseen circumstances. If that can be reconciled between addendum 5, the the description of the leased premise on number 1, where it's Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, and all day in emergency situations, i.e. snowstorms. And then the unforeseen circumstances and the use of the lease premise by the needs of the landlord. So does the landlord get to use these premise, and the landlord being OLGC, on those days that are described, Christmas, Catholic holidays, funerals, weddings, and Easters? And if that is the case, what happens to the vehicles? Because it seems like we would have to move, or the DMF would need to move. Regarding number 9, addendum number 9, what is contemplated by this section? What exclusions? And is this basically a get out of jail free that they could do whatever they want because the tenant is a New Jersey municipality? So if maybe Mr. Pollack could explain what is contemplated by that addendum. And number 11, has the JIF signed off on this, and do we have the sign off? Page 2, it's filled out that it commences April 1st. Do we know what the commencement date is of the contract? And do we have a commencement date for the construction or the demolition of the DMF? And is it contemplated that these would run in concurrent terms? Page 5, the insurance. It just seems odd that the landlord, OLGC, is being asked to include it or be included as an additional insured. I'm having trouble understanding why we, the township, would include OLGC as an insured on our policy. And lastly, on page 7, real estate taxes, has the tax assessor opined on the applicability of charging tax? And I understand that there'll be, if there is tax, that it will be a gross up of the payment. And if the payment is defined, how are we going to gross that up? In terms of, there's a dollar amount noted and it's saying to gross it up. So I'm really not sure I understand that. And those are my only questions. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pollard, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I wasn't taking the notes on every single question. I'll try and go through them the way I was taking them down here. The 9 was really for the benefit of the town, not the benefit of the landlord. It was that we were not being held, since we're a municipality, we may not be required to go to planning boards and zoning boards and doing certain things. We are exempt from doing a lot of things because we are a municipality. And so they just wanted to be held, harmless if we decided that we didn't have to do it. And then it turned out that we should have done it, or it was required that we did it. So that would be something that I would give because we control that. So it was really more for recognizing our ability to not do everything that maybe we would do if this was a straight commercial situation.
The
Okay.
other one was the additional insured.
The additional insurance is very common for a landlord to get that from a tenant because let's assume for a moment that one of our trucks hits a person in the parking lot. Everybody knows that everyone will be named as a party defendant, and so when you do that, the landlord, even though the landlord would have their own insurance as well, and they could get involved with their own subrogations and fighting between them, but landlords will require, it's not unusual for them to be named as additional insured. So that's kind of fairly straightforward. As far as real estate taxes, I'm not sure about the grossing up, but I'm going to if the lease is signed, and of course the lease does have to go through the JIF. We have to come up with if there was an approval, there would be an approval subject to obviously getting a commencement date because we don't have one yet, and we would determine the commencement date. I would get it off to the JIF for their approval. I would also send it to our tax assessor because nonprofits can be taxed to the extent that they are using some of their space for commercial ventures, things of that nature. The exact requirements, that would be the assessor's job to see if it fell into that category and what the number would be. What else? Was there any?
Zoning.
We're not required to go for any zoning, and they're using a parking lot for a parking lot, so there's no zoning involved. It's not being used for some warehouse, some textile factory or something that's not even a permitted use. I mean, they have a parking lot. They're allowing vehicles to be parked there. But
it's a commercial. It's a commercial venture. It's not parking parishioners can go in.
I don't believe it's a zoning. I don't think that we will give it to the construction official anyway and the zoning office, but I personally don't think there's going to be a zoning issue. That's the point I'm making.
It's a commercial venture in a residential zone because we're paying for something.
Okay. We'll see what they say.
And how about reconciling the days that they can't operate? So I think they called them Addendum 5, the unforeseen circumstances, and when you reconcile it to the use, that the use of the leased premise is subject to the needs of the landlord in unforeseen circumstances. So basically, the landlord on those days has the ability to use the property. So what happens to the trucks?
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Mr. Powell, Mr. Ullman, Mr. Powell, you can answer. Mr. Ullman, you are beyond your 5 minutes, so I am going to remove your permission to speak. But Mr. Powell, please go ahead and answer.
I will say I don't have an answer for what's going to happen to the trucks. I don't know if you've ever dealt with the Archdiocese before, but they're not an easy. They don't like to change things from what they have. It's very difficult. But we did try. It was very originally. It was very amorphous and very general that they could do quite a bit of taking over the space. So I did try to at least limit their ability as much as I possibly could. This was the best that we could get in terms of the from the Archdiocese. What's going to happen to the trucks? That's not for me to answer. I'd have to leave that to the administration.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Power? We can move on to the next attendee who has their hand raised.
Yeah, I don't have. Those were all my notes.
Thank you.
Mr.
Good evening,
Feeney,
yes.
Mr. Powell, excuse me.
Mr. DeSena, Councilman DeSena, we're going to have discussion.
No, but I have a question regarding what just happened. Mr. Pollard, during public hearing, there is no time limit, correct? As per state law?
Yeah, it's not a public hearing. It's not. It's
a public hearing. We have a public hearing going on.
I would say this.
You do not have the right to cut somebody off in a public hearing.
Okay. I don't think we have a 5-minute limit. I think you have you can impose a reasonable limit. If somebody wanted to go on for,
Correct.
I think you have a
But you
right.
cannot impose-
So excuse me then, thank you, Councilman DeSena, then I misspoke. Mr. Ullman, thank you for asking your questions, and Mr. Power has now answered them. Thank you.
Well, if Mr. Ullman has more
Good
questions.
evening, thank you. Yes, 201-220-0529. Yes, you're off mute. Could you just state your name and address, please?
Joe Durso, 12 Viola Terrace.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Durso.
Following up on Mr. Ullman's question. Mr. Poller said he doesn't know what's going to happen to the trucks on those days that are listed. So does the administration know, and did you calculate this problem going into this? And I already heard one of my other questions answered about planning and zoning. I find this absolutely wrong, just because it's not a municipality property. It's not. Just like years ago with the cell phone tower, it's a municipal property. You don't have to go through planning and zoning. This is not a municipal property. You're leasing it. You need to follow the guidelines of your own rules. So this needs to go to the planning board. And then I would assume that the planning board is going to kick it because there's zoning issues, because it's not zoned commercial. So my question is, why? If the town doesn't have purview over everything, you don't own this property, so you can't make your rules up. And I'd like Mr. Ullman's question answered by maybe the mayor, because it seems like him and the administrator orchestrated this whole lease. So ask Mr. Ullman's question, since he was rudely cut off, and I'm not cut off as of yet. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Well, let me just jump back in there and say that I did speak with the construction official. He did not feel zoning or planning was involved at all. Actually spoke to them before and spoke to them again today. But we will run it by the zoning officer. They'll make the determination. They'll make the determination.
Stacy, I'd like to point out again, me nor the administrator had anything to do with this lease. It was all up to Mr. Poller and the Archdiocese people. The extent of my involvement was I asked the pastor of the parish if they might be interested in letting the town use part of the parking lot. He said yes. That's when I turned it over to Mr. Poller to negotiate. That is the extent of, and I don't know that Bob really got involved with the lease at all, but you know, just more false information being put out there.
So I don't see any new hands being raised, correct?
Mr. Ullman is back on. I don't know if that's intentional. And then this 201, that's Mr. Durso, I believe.
I just can't, after they came on,
Mr. Ferrara.
I can't lower their hands, so I don't see Mr. Ferrara anymore.
There we go. There's a lower hand.
There's Mr. Ferrara.
And there's Mr. Ferrara.
Okay.
Looks like that's it.
Mr. Ferrara has his hand up.
It seems to be going, okay. Good evening, Mr. Ferrara.
Oh, let's add on.
William Ferrara, 2556 Cleveland. Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Ferrara,
Okay.
yes.
I just want to, I'm getting very confused about this whole thing, okay? So I just want to go back. At one point in time, I understood that Valley National Bank had offered us property that we could put things. When you were discussing the possibility of using the property by the doghouse and at Sherry Fields, you were talking about storing equipment and constructing temporary buildings. Now you're talking about a parking lot that you're just going to park vehicles in, that you're going to have to take the vehicles off the property at certain times because the church needs to use it on Sundays and holidays, etc. So the thought came to my mind is, why don't you just park the vehicles in the streets overnight in some place that's out of the way? Or possibly, instead of going into a lease with this place, with the church, is to look to the swim club to give you a lease, since you're involved in negotiating a purchase, to see if they wouldn't lease you some property, especially since they apparently are behind in their taxes, and use the money that they would get to pay off the tax that gets up on the tax bill. I just don't understand this lease with this church. And quite frankly, I don't want to make any comments about the ethics of the church. They get free. All nonprofits get free services from the towns, and now they want their handout because in your time of need, they put their hand out and say, for $60,000 and picks up all my equipment, you can all my property, you can put the equipment there. I really think that's bad ethics on their part. That's all I have. See.
Thank you, Mr. Ferrara. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Tovo?
I'll jump in and say, we reached out to the swim club. They have an injunction that prevents them from allowing the rental of their parking lot for any vehicles or equipment. We are using the space at Valley National Bank, but it is not enough space to accommodate the entire need. So that's why we are also looking into the church parking lot.
Do we have a lease with Valley Bank, Mr. Mayor?
I think we do. It's a $0 lease, but there is some type of an agreement. I don't know that I would call it a lease. Maybe it's just a letter of understanding or something.
What about insurance and all this issues Mr. Pollard brought up at the church about somebody getting hurt by our vehicles? So don't you think it'd be prudent on us as a government to have the same typical, even if it's a $0 lease in effect? So God forbid something happened at Valley National Bank, we're covered?
No, Mr. DeSena, we would be covered if it's we'd be covered for our vehicles if they're there. What the Archdiocese wanted was coverage for them. So if they were named, not protecting us, we're protected. And I don't believe Valley, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think Valley asked for it.
Yeah, but don't you think it'd be prudent to have something in place in your legal professional opinion that we should have something in place with Valley National Bank that somebody doesn't all of a sudden say, hey, you're paying the bank, you're paying the church 60 grand, you owe us 60 grand. I mean, don't you think these things should be executed?
No, I think you're missing the point again. I think anyway. So there is the liability that we concern ourselves with is that we're covered in case there's a claim against the town. We're not worried about if there's a claim against Valley Bank or anybody else. So we wouldn't be going out unless we had to, which we did in with the church, with the Archdiocese rather. But I don't believe, and I can't remember, but I don't believe that the Valley was interested even in getting any coverage. They have their own insurance, and I don't believe they asked for any. And I could be wrong. I don't recall it. Probably was a while ago, I think.
But should we have some kind of legal document for a $0 lease in place just to be safe?
I thought there was something, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we do. I remember signing something.
Yes, and there was liability insurance.
Can we get a copy of that? Mrs. Wachowski?
Sure.
I don't think Mr. DeSena is so focused on the insurance. I think what he's basically saying is
the agreement.
If there's no agreement, right?
Oh,
so like, you're going to pay $0 next year. They say, hey, we want $10,000 because you're paying the church, and you have nothing but nothing to hold them to. I knew what you meant.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
I knew what you meant.
Thank you for the interpretation.
Yes. Everyone's going back to the insurance. It wasn't about that.
Yeah. Okay.
One question.
Yeah, well, it's a concern, right? Just like the Archdiocese wants it, right?
Stacy, oh, sorry, you didn't close the public part yet. Sorry.
No, if you have another comment about that, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a minute or two prepared statement to educate people who are listening on how we got to in the OLGC space.
Did you close the public portion, by the way, or no?
Well, we don't have any new hands raised, so.
You have an 0529. Who's that? That's great.
No, I believe that was Mr. Durso.
Well, do you want to go back in? You gave Mr. Ferrara another chance. Do you want him to, if he does have anything to add?
Yeah, I think, and he didn't speak this time. He spoke on the last one, correct?
Well,
I think he wanted to speak on this one, Mr. Ferrara. That's the one he called in originally.
Yeah.
He didn't speak twice, though. He spoke on the last one.
Well, now his name is gone.
Yeah, he disappeared.
I think he was raising his. I think maybe he thought it was the next session, but I don't see any new hands raised.
His hand is down, Mr. Forrest.
Okay, motion to close public comment section.
So move.
Second,
Second.
Sue?
Hold on one sec. Councilman Cassio?
Yes.
Councilman DeSena?
Yes.
Councilwoman Morgan?
Yes.
Councilman Sears?
Yes.
Council President Feeney?
Yes. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we're going to motion for the ordinance and then we're gonna let the mayor say his statement and then we'll have discussion as a council, so everyone's clear. I'm sorry? Okay. Motion to adopt ordinance number 21-05 at second reading by title. I'll make the motion. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'll just come off of my prepared remarks for a minute to answer the question about holidays at the church. For those of you who may be parishioners there or who drive by, that parking lot has not been used in years by any church function. I'm sorry to say that, people aren't attending churches much as they used to. So that lot has not been used for years. And so the church does not anticipate taking it back. But it is something they wanted in the lease, just in case. But Sunday overflow hasn't overflowed to that lot in years. Wedding funeral has not. So just wanted to clear that up also. Now I'll go into my prepared remarks, if that's okay. This ordinance is for the temporary placement of DPW equipment while the DPW facility is demolished and the soil underneath it is remediated. I would like to inform the town residents and clear up some potential confusion as to how we got here. Decades ago, the current DPW site was found to have contaminated soil beneath it from in-ground fuel tanks on the site. The DEP mandated a cleanup and remediation and placed a deadline for when it had to be completed. Previous administrations were well aware of this problem and did nothing about it. When I became mayor, I immediately began investigating potential alternate sites in town to house the DPW. Discussions took place with the council at council meetings regarding the topic and were also part of my monthly reports read at the meetings. Also, upon becoming mayor, I was confronted with a DPW that was woefully under-equipped to do its job. That not only did not have enough equipment, but what they had was obsolete, antiquated, and in disrepair. I'm happy to report that working with the council in agreeing to fund the necessary items, the DPW now has the equipment they need to do their job more efficiently and effectively than ever before. But the equipment does take up space and it does need to be stored somewhere. We explored many town-owned sites and again, none were found to be acceptable. We explored and requested help from our neighboring municipalities of Westwood, Hillsdale, Woodcliff Lake, and a county facility in Paramus. I made a request at a mayor's meeting for assistance from every other town in the Pascack Valley. None had the space to assist us. We explored and inquired about leasing space for many private entities, such as the Bethany Church, the old TD Bank, the old Charlie Brown's, a private lot in Hillsdale, and numerous office building parking lots in Paramus. In all cases, the property owners simply could not accommodate our needs. Each dead end, In all cases, the property owners simply could not accommodate our needs. Each dead end we were met with meant starting all over again. So the decision was made to construct a temporary two-bay garage in the current town hall parking lot and to store some of the vehicles and equipment off-site. In addition to Valley Bank, OLGC was the only facility that was willing to accommodate our requirements. The lease was negotiated by the Archdiocese and the Township attorney. I nor any member of the council were involved. A few residents have expressed issues with the town renting from a church and citing church and state separation conflicts. But I would like to point out that the town has been renting space and facilities from the Bethany Church for the summer rec program and the gymnasium for basketball. I think all would agree it has resulted in a significant increase in the quality of the program and greatly expanded the number of children we are able to accommodate. Additionally, the Westwood Regional School District, a tax dollar funded operation, rented classroom space from OLGC years ago without any objection. Churches are nonprofit organizations, and there is a long history of government working with nonprofits for the benefit of the public. Some of the lease terms are as follows. The lease terms reference hours of operation because the Archdiocese has a standard lease they use for leasing indoor or outdoor space. The hours listed there are the approximate hours of the DPW operations, not the hours the equipment will occupy the space. The equipment will be there 24/7. The town is responsible to remove snow and ice only from the part of the property that the lease covers, not the entire facility. According to the DEP, we are now out of time to remediate the DPW space. The potential fines levied to the town could be far more than the rental space will cost. I think it is again worth mentioning that we are borrowing the money for these projects at historically low interest rates, and most of them are bonded over a long period to spread the financial impact to the taxpayers out over many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, discussion. Would anybody have any comments for discussion?
Yes, Council President Feeney.
Go ahead.
4 years ago, when I was elected to be on this dais and with the prior council, I immediately brought up this toxic legacy we left behind with prior administrations, which the mayor served as council president on, and we decided to take on this task of remediating the property at the DMF site at the time. Plans had been previously drawn, never built, and we had issues. Mr. Pollard, it took about a year to get onto property, to get the reports closed so we could finally get to the paperwork we needed to get the DEP to agree to let us extend the permits. And we've sat on it for 4 years now, another 4 years. We still to date don't have a remediation plan of what we're remediating from the soil that this council has seen. If the administration's seen it, that's fine, but this council has never been presented that plan. And neither have we been presented with a plan for the new DPW building and layout of that building and cost estimates for that building. So I have no objection to leasing the property from the church because the toxic legacy has to go away. We need to tear down this building and get this soil out of here that's polluted wells. It's gotten people sick, and we need to get rid of it. It's our due diligence as, the stewards of our township to get it done. It should have been done many years ago. We started this process 4 years. I'm saddened that it took 4 years to get to this point. I will vote yes, not because I'm in favor of leasing the space from the church. I agree. I don't like when people are talking about falsehoods. Every resident deserves the right to speak and present what they feel is how they feel. If we don't like it, we should not say that it's false. It's their interpretation of what they're reading in the papers and what they see on these Zoom meetings. So when we say we're spreading false information, they're not spreading false information. They're spreading what they believe is what they're interpreting, what they're getting out of it. So I will vote yes for this, but I'd like to see the plans for the new building. I'd like to see the remediation contract, and I'd like to get that going as soon as possible. To date, we have not seen either. So, we had talked about, buying the horse farm and moving the DPW, which fell through. We have talked about a million other things, but to date, nothing has happened. We need to get this toxic earth out of the ground, and I'd like to see the plan for it. I'd like to see the cost estimates for it. Again, the mayor pointed out that we're borrowing money at zero. We are not borrowing money. The prior councils have allocated the $1 million plus another $400,000 that was from the sale of the Westwood School building. So this project is fully being funded by revenue that's been kept in surplus for years for the sale of the property of the Westwood School building. So we are not borrowing money to build this building. Thank you, Mrs. Feeney.
Councilman Cassio, do you have any comments?
At this point, no. It's been an exhaustive process. We've been dealing with this for 10 years now, greater than 10 years, and it just seems to go nowhere. We are right now under the gun to get this project done. Again, as Mr. DeSena said, we have no plan at this point. All we know is where we're going to put our trucks. We don't even know when the remediation is going to start. We have not been privy to that information. If the administration does have it, I'd like to be informed of it, please. So again, at this point, I just want to get it over with, to tell you the truth. At the quickest amount, cheapest price, let's get it done. Because it's been sitting for a long time. It's been neglected by numerous administrations and councils. So that's all I have to say.
Councilman Sears?
No, I'm just glad to see this thing going away. It's been a nightmare for years, from the mold to people getting sick to the congestion. I'm just glad to see we're moving ahead. Thank you.
Vice President Morgan?
I can just say what everyone else has said. I'm excited that I'm going to be part of the solution, that we're going to be on the council that does get it done. And I appreciate the mayor pushing this forward. And I know that you did meet resistance with a lot of the properties that you were trying to move this on. And I just appreciate that everyone's going to vote yes, so we can finally get this done. As you've all mentioned, it's way too long. It's making residents sick. It's good to know, and I'm excited to see that it's going to actually happen. So this is, let's vote. Let's get this done.
Thank you. I just want to say I also am happy to be part of the solution for this. I want to say that the mayor and the administration have brought to us in closed session during my entire time on the council, multiple closed sessions with options and solutions, and we sent them back with additional questions, not allowing for it to be presented for vote. So the public should be aware of that. And I just want to state that false information means any written or verbal statement or representation of a fact that is not true and was made intentionally, knowing or without having taken the reasonable steps to ascertain whether the information was true or not. And I think it's important that we all represent what actually has happened during council meetings, whether they're public or closed, and the information we're allowed to put out to the public. So I am also very happy to be moving this forward. So thank you.
Can I throw in one comment?
Sure, Mr. Poller.
Yeah, and I'm sure nothing was meant by this, but there was a comment that it took me a year to get something done. But what that year was I had.
Oh, it wasn't a derogatory comment, Mr.
Okay.
Pollard. It was that you couldn't get access to the site for a year because of legal issues.
Yeah, correct.
No. It wasn't meant that. I didn't present it that way. I was muted by the host for some reason. I don't understand why.
Because what happened was we had to actually sue the people. We actually had a full trial.
No. That took time, and that's why I said it took you a year and a half to get onto the property to get the report completed.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Stacey, you're on mute.
Mr. Poller, could you just say that again? I was unable to hear you.
Yeah, the time that I was involved was there was a property owner who would not let us get on the property to get extracts from our monitoring wells. And without that, the DEP would not process our paperwork and let us move forward with remediation. So it wound up, I had to actually go to court, sue them, go to court, bring in experts, have a trial, and actually go through the whole process of getting access. And then finally we did that. That did take the year to get all that done, to get the case done, trial, and the result of the trial. So that was, wanted to throw that in.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Poller.
Stacey,
And thank you for go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. DeSena and I respectfully disagree on some things. However, the one thing I do agree with what he said is, he said we've spoken about a million things on this. It takes time to talk about these million things and put them into action, especially when we only have governing body meetings twice a month. So I do agree that it's been an ongoing process. We've been moving it along as fast as we can. There are no plans for a new DPW because, as everyone on the council well knows, we've also been looking for alternative sites. It doesn't look like any will come to fruition, but we went right to the very end, which we are at right now, to look for alternate locations. It doesn't look like there are going to be any. That's also why we have now gone out for, I always lose track, I'm sorry, RFQs or Ps for architects. That the architect will now start to look at a building in the existing footprint. So I just want to point those things out to the public.
Can we get a copy of that RFQ, Mr. Mayor? Because that's the first I'm hearing of an RFQ for architects for the DPW. Can we get a copy of that sent to us, please?
Bob, can you take care of that, please?
All right, that was provided to council back in January, but I can provide it again.
Thank you.
Okay, and I just want to say that I think we've done a great job to trying to get this through tonight and in the past, and I'm glad that we're moving forward. Sue?
You ready for a roll call?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Councilman Cassio.
Councilman Castro, you're on mute.
No.
Councilman DeSena.
Yes.
Councilwoman Morgan.
Yes.
Councilman Sears.
Yes.
And Council President Feeney.
Yes. Resolution number 21-185, emergency resolution ordinance 2105. I'll make a motion. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Sue?
Councilman Cassio.
Can we
Yes.
discuss it, please, Mrs. Feeney?
Sure. Sorry, I thought we were included.
I'm sorry. I'm my page jumped. No, go ahead. I moved
Are
to
you
the next page. I thought we were looking at a different ordinance. Sorry.
Are you sure?
I thought we were looking at 2106. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, it's okay. That's why the reason, and just so you know, the reason I didn't stop because we were still on the same one. So.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. No, it's
That's
my
okay.
fault.
Okay. Right. Sue, we have a motion and a second, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead.
Councilman Cassio.
Yes.
Councilman DeSena.
Yes.
Councilwoman Morgan.
Yes.
Councilman Sears.
Yes.
And Council President Feeney.
Yes, thank you. Now, Councilman DeSena, we're on 2106.
Thank you.
Introduction, first reading, ordinance number 21-06, ordinance providing for the acquisition of new and additional equipment for use by the Police Department of the Township of Washington in the County of Bergen, New Jersey, and appropriating $115,000 therefore for monies in the Capital Improvements Fund of the Township. Motion to introduce and pass ordinance number 21-06 at first reading by title. We'll have
So moved.
second, please.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Tova, we're going to use those two remaining balances to fund this.
Actually, we are not. It was discovered by our auditor that there's still some liability for accumulated leave stemming from the DPW. Although at this point, it's not a lot. They recommend that we leave it behind.
Well, I thought there was two places we were getting funding from. One had 78,000 and the other had the remaining.
Yeah, we never identified what the balance, where the balance would come from. It was a couple $1,000 because we stopped at the point that we were advised to leave that money there for the other accumulated leave that may be a liability down the road.
So what budgets is this coming out of right now?
So therefore, the recommendation of both LVH and bond counsel was to do a separate standalone bond ordinance so we can get this project funded to assist the police in making their deadline. As we all know, these items, for the most part, are mandated, so we really have to try to show that we are trying to reach that deadline.
What's the deadline for this, Mr. Tovo?
June of 20.
June 1st.
I'm sorry, June 1st?
Yes.
Of
How many years
2021?
on do we do it, Mr. Tova?
I'm
Well,
sorry,
this is not
Mr. Tovo,
gonna
June 1st of 2021?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
How many years is this bond amortizing, Mr. Tova?
Well, it's not a bond yet. Once it goes to bond, I would imagine it would be a 7 to 10 year bond.
What's the life on those?
Pretty consistent with the life of the bond.
What's the life of the camera? What's the life of it? Do you know?
As I just said, pretty consistent with the length of the bond. That's how they do
7 to 10.
determine how long it'll be.
Okay.
Mr. Tubbo, Tom Sears. The Assembly passed Ordinance 4907, or the docket, and they're supplying $58 million towards the purchase of these. Would that help reduce the costs?
Yeah, that's another reason why a standalone ordinance is recommended. So if we do get money refunded to the township, we can just pay the bond down.
Okay.
When is that supposed to take effect, Mr. Sears? I read that today. I didn't see the effective date.
The effective date would be January 1, 2022, according to the legislative document 4907. But it's giving availability of $58 million general fund to the Department of Law and Safety. And I'm 100% sure, and what Mr. Tovo can agree with me, that, we will get a portion of that money that is coming out of the Attorney General's policy towards these cameras.
And Mr. Chief Skinner had mentioned that they hadn't released what it was going to be, but they were talking about amongst the chiefs, there was going to be reimbursement.
I would agree with Mr. Sears' statement with the caveat that please keep in mind that reimbursement is just for the body-worn cameras, not the in-car cameras.
And according, if you
This
see
includes
what's,
the tasers, right, Mr. Tova?
I'm sorry, the what?
This amount includes the taser amount, correct?
The taser is included in there, yes.
So would that be covered under that, or is that strictly for cameras?
Strictly for body-worn cameras, which is the lion's share of the quote or the cost.
Yeah.
And has Chief Skinner's waiting on us to put the order in, or has he already spoken to the vendors? We know the equipment's available.
Obviously, he has spoken to the vendors on numerous occasions, but in order to purchase capital money, it's got to be fully funded.
So it's going to be a while before we float a bond and everything. So, okay. Can the chief financial officer see if we have anywhere that there's this any kind of amount so we can fund this somehow?
That's been checked already as well. There's enough money in our capital surplus right now to fund this. So therefore, we can wait, as long as we wait 10 days and do a second reading, we can pass this within guidelines and statute, and the funding is currently there.
I would suggest that we do it that way, what Mike said. June 1st is coming pretty fast, and not for nothing, but the environment that these policemen are now working in, we would not only need protection from them, we would need protection from frivolous lawsuits against the township. So I think whatever way we can expedite this to get them this thing, it's really a quality of life for them and safety for our community.
Absolutely.
And we don't want to not have them in place for, we want to try to get it as close to June 1st as possible so that they don't come in and then we get a ding against us for that.
Yeah, because by the time Mr. Beinfeld puts out a bond, it's going to be a few months, and then we got to wait for the sale and $115,000.
Mr. Tobey, you were saying?
He does not need to put a bond out right now. There's enough money in the capital surplus to fund this. When I say fully funded, it's got to be approved by the council so that we can spend the money that's currently there in the, in the surplus.
I would.
Can we have Mr. Corcoran tell us what the balance of our surplus will be if we do that?
Yes, I can do that.
So we can make an informed decision?
Well, I can tell you there's ample left. I can get the exact dollar amount, but
well, the mayor's already anticipating using 1.8 million of the surplus for this budget, according to what was presented to us. So we'd be using 1.9, we'd be using 1.915 million out of the surplus, then not 1.8. So it does have, financial implications. I agree wholeheartedly. That's why I want to get it done as soon as possible. It's an important thing for our police department, but we need.
Okay, so this has been stated. Mr. Tobo is going to go back and get the surplus numbers for us. Okay, we need to. Okay, so Mr. Tobo, you'll get that out to the council?
Oh, yes, but I'm asking that we can have a vote on this tonight so that we're not delayed any further.
I agree. I think we need to vote on this.
Yeah, we should move on this.
Right.
It's only a first reading anyway.
Yes, exactly.
That's why I'm asking for
Sue,
the
roll
information.
call, please. Thank you.
Councilman Casio.
Yes.
Councilman DeSena.
Yes.
Councilwoman Morgan.
Yes.
Councilman Sears.
Yes.
Council President Feeney.
Yes. Resolution number 21-186, authorizing publication of ordinance number 21-06 and schedule a public hearing. I'll make a
So
motion.
moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Sue, roll call.
Councilman Casio.
Yes.
Councilman DeSena.
Yes.
Councilwoman Morgan.
Yes.
Councilman Sears.
Yes.
Council President Feeney.
Yes. Okay, great. Ordinance number 21-07, calendar year 2021, ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank. Motion to introduce and pass ordinance number 21-07 at first reading by title. I'll make a motion. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion? Remember, this is a first reading and a publication of the ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, why are you recommending 3.5%? We haven't used the cap bank in years. In a COVID world, to exceed the 1% by another 2.5% is very excessive.
Mr. Mayor, do you have an answer for
I'm still talking,
Councilman
Mrs. Feeney. I'm still talking, Mrs. Feeney.
Right, so I'm just trying to see if
I know, but you're interrupting me. When I do it, I get scolded. But when you do it, it seems okay. But now I'm being a bully because I'm correcting you, correct? So now I lost my train of thought. Mr. Mayor, what is your reasoning for adding 2.5% to the cap bank this year in a COVID world where we're supposed to be spending less? It's another $250,000 that we could spend for, that we could save, putting it into the cap bank.
I'm very sorry, Councilman DeSena, that you feel that that was unfair, and I'm very sorry that you lost your train of
It's the
thought.
fourth time tonight you've done it.
I'm apologizing.
No need to apologize.
Okay, let's keep it moving, Mayor.
Yes, let's go.
Mayor, can I interject here, please?
Yeah, Bob, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, the last couple of years that I can speak for, we did pass this resolution just in case the need did arise to go above the cap bank. That's certainly not the intention of the mayor or the administration to do so. We did pass it last year when COVID was present as well. So just some historical perspective.
But when's the last time we've used the cap bank, Mr. Tova?
Not during my tenure here, sorry. That's all I can answer for.
I've gone back over 7 years. I haven't been able to find any other information, but I've never seen the cap bank used. So I'd like to see this left at 1% and do some fiscal restraint on the council's end to keep this at 1%.
Well, just because we're banking it doesn't mean we're going to use it like Bob said. It's a maximum, so.
But it gives us the right to spend another $250,000 of taxpayers that's not being funded. So we need to be fiscally responsible as a council. And I'd like to see us this year avoid passing the cap bank ordinance and leave it at 1%. That's my take. I will be voting no.
I wouldn't think the council needs a cap bank to keep the spending under control, but it's just to take it to the max because we don't know where the budget will end up at this time. Looks like Stacy's frozen. Oh, there you go.
Oh, she's there.
No, but you're on mute, Stacy.
Wait, she just disappeared.
All I hit was unmute.
What'd you do now, Mrs. Wachowski?
I just asked her to unmute. That's all I did.
Oh, Sue, gotta watch you. Don't get on Sue's bad side. She just shut you off. We have a great clerk, just to let the public know. Probably the best one in Bergen County.
Yep.
She's the best. And I say that.
Tired at this point.
I say that with all sincerity. She is the best.
I will agree to that.
We've seen a few, Mr. Sears, right?
Yes, we have, Dr. Cassio.
How are you?
Must have logged off.
Yeah, I don't know if she's having a hard time getting back on.
It's 10 o'clock. It's the witching hour.
Ezra, are you comfortable picking up the meeting till she rejoins us?
Sure.
Okay.
We were at the point where, is she coming in?
Yep.
Yes, she is.
Sorry, we had like a little flash here. So,
Uh-oh.
okay.
Electrical flash?
I don't really, to be honest with you, the lights flashed for like a second and then my screen went frozen and then it wasn't, you guys weren't there anymore.
I'm
So
sure you're safe.
It's the ghost of Councilman Cumming at Northgate.
oh no.
He's trying to send you a message.
Yes, he's trying to
It's 10
send me.
o'clock. It's time to go home.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so where did we, did you guys do anything or,
No.
No, we were about to. We're at the roll call part if you were ready for that.
for the first reading by title, or did you move on to this publication?
No, first reading by title.
Okay, is there any more discussion warranted for this? Okay, Sue, roll call.
Councilman Cassio,
Yes.
Councilman DeSena,
No.
Councilwoman Morgan,
Yes.
Councilman Sears,
Yes.
and Council President Feeney.
Yes. Resolution number 21-187, authorizing publication of ordinance number 21-07 and schedule a public hearing. I'll make a motion. May I have a second, please?
Second.
Second.
Do we need additional discussion or no? Okay, Sue?
Councilman Cassio,
Yes.
Councilman DeSena,
Yes.
Councilwoman Morgan,
Yes.
Councilman Sears,
Yes.
Council President Feeney.
Yes. Resolutions and consent agenda. The following items have been determined to have the unanimous consent of council and will be enacted in one motion. Should any item require independent consideration, any council member may have such item removed from the consent agenda. Does anyone want to have any of the two items removed for discussion?
The bill list removed for discussion, please.
Sure. Okay, so we'll vote on resolution number 21-189, authorize refund of engineering escrow monies B4205 L1494 Cross Street not to exceed $736.75. Motion to approve single consent agenda resolution. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Can we have a discussion, Mrs. Feeney?
About the second one that we didn't remove?
Yes, just very quickly. A few meetings back, I asked why two engineers were reviewing these engineering escrows and billing our residents twice. The practice is still going on. The applications are coming into the building department. They're being reviewed by the building engineer for a large escrow amount, and then they're being reviewed by the planning or the zoning board for a large escrow amount. We were told multiple months ago that this would stop. It happened yesterday. I had somebody show me their escrow receipts that they had to post an additional $1,500 to go in front of the planning board after they were charged $1,000 by the building department engineer. This is a very unheard of system that two engineers are reviewing it. I'd ask the administration to immediately cease and desist this practice because it's costing our residents a lot of undue burden. It's a financial hardship for a lot of them to come up with another $1,500 when they don't even know they have a yes or a no on their plans. And no other town, the zoning officer is responsible to make the initial determination, not the building department engineer for $1,000 in escrow. That is the zoning officer's responsibility. Mr. Poller, I hope you correct in assessment of that. Are you there, Mr. Poller?
How long has that been occurring?
Oh, for months now. When we brought it up 2 months ago, we were told it was going to stop. It has been occurring for months.
It's a newer practice. We weren't all that was.
As of January 1st, it's been occurring.
Who made that change?
I can't answer that.
There was some confusion in the very beginning. I thought it was taken care of. Mike, I don't know if you still have that paperwork, if you could forward it. If not.
The resident asked to say nameless because they don't want to be punished by the planning board or the zoning board for me speaking on their behalf. That's why I don't want to name the resident. But it's multiple residents. I get weekly calls about it that they've put up $2,500 to two different engineers to get their plans approved by the planning or the zoning board. It is a undue hardship that we should not be imposing on our residents. And unfortunately, Mr. Mayor, I know you've been out with COVID and all, but it's still an ongoing practice and it needs to stop tomorrow if I could ask for.
It's obviously, like I said, I knew there was confusion back in January when we brought the second engineer on. But however, since you tell me it's still occurring, yes, it will be. Bob and I will look into it tomorrow, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, just for that, I know I had called the building department to find out what was going on, and apparently because of there is a change to the process because of the new administrative people that are there, and there is a portion where it's being reviewed to determine which engineer it's supposed to go to.
Right,
So,
the zoning officer should be doing that, yeah.
yeah, so all applications that are coming in are being reviewed to make sure that they go to the right engineer, to make sure that there's no additional fees to the residents.
But
That
why
was
are they
my
paying twice?
understanding. Sorry.
I don't know with that one specifically if we can get an answer, but we don't know which one it is. But I was curious myself after that meeting, and I called the building department, and they told me the process, and that because of the confusion and the additional charges that happened last year, in order to avoid the additional charges now, they were having it reviewed initially to determine which engineer it should be going to, and which
But
go
but the
first, correct,
process,
Mr. Mayor?
The zoning officer makes that determination, no one else. And he's a town employee that we pay a salary to, so he doesn't charge the residents. And that's not what it's.
Correct.
So,
Bob and I will look into it tomorrow, and we'll get back to the council ASAP. Because that's
right, and that is what's supposed to be happening, what I was told, correct, by the building department. Okay.
correct, yes.
Because after that came up, Mike, I called and I asked what the process was to see where the additional fees were coming in, because I got phone calls also. So, and that's what I was told was the change as of January, as the zoning officers reviewing to
Right.
see which department, which engineer the application's supposed to go to first.
Absolutely.
You didn't mention or question, Stace, about the cost?
I did. They said there should not be an extra cost. I think if that resident is receiving an extra cost, they should absolutely reach out to somebody, maybe Mr. Tovo directly. Maybe there was a mistake. It could happen. Everybody's human. They make mistakes. So
I'd be happy to have them reach out to Mr. Tovo, but we'll review them all that way.
Sure, because then they're due a
Extent
refund.
to the problem.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
To Mr. DeSanto's point, that person might be eligible for reimbursement. So if
Right.
they want to contact me confidentially, we can look at that.
I think they're going to wait until they find out whether they're approved or disapproved, and then they'll be in contact with you, Mr. Tovo.
Okay, very well.
Thank you.
However,
But I think there are lots of residents that this occurred to, so maybe we should have our building department look at who this occurred to and figure out, like Mrs. Morgan just said, who deserves a refund, because this has occurred to a lot of residents. So if we could look through our escrow slips and see when people have been escrowed by two different engineers for the same application, I think you guys in the administration should be able to figure out who's owed a refund, and then this way we can be very proactive instead of reactive and get them their refunds before they even ask for them.
Yeah, but they were very versed on when I called. They knew what should be happening. So maybe it was just some confusion in the beginning of the year. But it'd be nice if the residents who feel that they, maybe were overcharged, that they could, expedite to get them a refund. I mean, if they're due a refund even before they're approved or not, they're entitled to it.
Yeah, and let me just finish up by saying, I feel bad that a resident might feel that we would take it out on them when they bring something to our attention. That is not the case at all. We appreciate when the residents bring things to our attention. So if anyone listening would have a second thought, please bring it to the administrator's attention. Neither board will consider that a knock on you or anything. We make mistakes and we will correct them, but please feel free to bring it out to us.
And they can email Mr. Tovo directly through the town's website.
Yeah, but I think we should be proactive and look at all the receipts and
I
just
totally agree.
Twice, who's been billed twice, and just give them a refund. And that's something we should do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
On to the bill list. Councilman DeSena, did you have a question?
Yes, on page 1, Mr. Tovo.
We have a motion in a second before you.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. Okay, resolution number 21-188, authorized payment of bills April 1st through April 14th, 2021. I'll make a motion. Second.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Councilman DeSena.
On page 1, Mr. Tovo, the $667.50 paid to Lauren Travinci to meet with the CFO and tax collector. I mean, isn't that part of their monthly work or whatever we pay Lauren Travinci and Higgins to do for us?
They're not on a retainer. That was additional training for the CFO on Edmonds.
Okay. On page,
doesn't Edmonds offer training? And isn't that part of our contract with them or no?
They do, but this training was specific to some township items, not Edmonds items.
Okay.
on page 6, Mr. Tovo, we have advanced electrical contracting for 1575.
Page 6.
Yes, page 6.
Yes, I see it.
The problem, I don't have a problem with the billing. I have a problem that used to be the meetup spot for our internet sales program. So that sign has been removed now, so people don't have the location of the meetup spot. So can we put the meetup spot sign back up in that location so people know where to go, so they can be videotaped while they're making their internet sales?
I will certainly look into that.
Because it says you removed the lamppost near the DMF building, which when I was there on Saturday, I asked what happened to the meetup spot, and they said they were preparing the for the demolition, and the lamps had been removed, which I don't have a problem with, but I have a problem with, not providing that service to our residents for the meetup spot.
Yeah, the intention is to relocate that, so we'll go back up.
Okay, but we should
You know where it's going to be relocated to?
Once the remediation is done, we'll have a better idea where that can go.
So are we going to stop the meetup spot, Mr. Tovo, until the remediation's done?
May I interject something?
Well, we need to have that because there's been a lot of issues lately, as Councilman DeSena is pointing out, where people are getting robbed or they're getting hurt or injured, or that needs to remain.
I thought that location was chosen because the video camera is pointed at it and the police department could see it when somebody came there, is what the council was told in the past. And I hope that's true because it made the most sense.
So we will look at it again to see that we don't have to wait until remediation, but we do know there's a parcel of land beyond the building that needs to be remediated as well. So I don't want anything we do now to interfere with that. So I will know that by tomorrow.
Okay.
There were several articles this past 10 days where people were getting hurt because of internet sales. So
on page 8, Mr. Tovo, I know the garbage truck decals are the decals to say that we're in compliance so we can go dump at the dump, but should that really be billed to a sign expense? Did that get On page 8, New Jersey Department of Treasury, $534, garbage truck decals. So I'm sure it's the DEP decals that say we can dump for 2021, but I don't think that should be coded to DMF sign expense because that's not what that's for.
I will look into that.
I also had an issue at the beginning of the meeting. Mrs. Feeney said that Suez is flushing hydrants. Currently on Beach Street, there are 3 hydrants in a row that have been taken out of service, and I have had a lot of residents complaining about that. Do we know when Suez will be here to repair these hydrants? So in case, God forbid, we have a fire emergency or some kind of emergency, the home should be protected by the hydrants, because a brand new one has been fully removed from its stem, and the other 2 have been taken out of service. They've removed all the caps on them and everything and put an out of service thing on them so the fire department can't use them. So can we find out what's going on with the hydrants on Beach Street and see when we can get a response on when they're going to be put back into service?
As per my last conversation with Suez regarding this, once the flushing is done, their crews will come out to address all the deficient hydrants that were located. So it should begin sometime in May.
Well, you have 3 in a row.
Oh, we have 3 in a row, Bob. So I'm a little concerned. It's not one.
The amount of items that we would have to drop.
One at a time, please.
If we have 3 in a row, please don't wait for a council meeting to tell me that. Call me so we can get them to move more quickly on it.
As I was walking my blind dog today, I happened to walk past them and she decided to lift her leg on one, and then I started to look at all the other 2, and I just found out today. So it has nothing to do with bringing it up. It just happened today, Mr. Tobo. That's why.
The good news is a blind dog, you still find a fire hydrant.
Isn't it amazing? She could find the steps. She could find the steps. She could find the steps. She could find the steps, and she knows where. It's amazing, and she can open boxes of food without seeing them. It's amazing. That's all I have, Mrs. Feeney, on the bill list.
Tom, do you happen to know, does Suez notify the fire department when they're?
No, we usually get a notification and the chief broadcasts it out, over the radio. But you got 3 hydrants out in the road. You know the amount of hose we would have to drop?
Yeah.
Correct.
We would have to drop from Westwood to bring it in.
Ms. Feeney,
Yes.
before we leave this portion of the meeting, I did get an update from DPW that hotspot has already been relocated.
I'm sorry, just say that one more time.
That hotspot has already been relocated within the parking lot.
Meat spot.
The meat spot.
Sorry.
I thought you said hotspot, and I said, I didn't know.
did. I apologize.
And we're sure we have video cameras on it, Mr. Tomo?
We do.
Okay, thank you.
That's good. That's a good safety thing. Does anybody else have any questions regarding the bill list?
No.
No.
Okay. Sue, roll call?
Councilman Casio,
Yes.
Councilman DeSena,
Yes.
Councilwoman Morgan,
Yes.
Councilman Sears,
Yes.
Council President Feeney.
Yes. Okay, adjournment to conference agenda. I'll make a motion. Do I have a second?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, this evening we are going on, where's my this agenda sheet?
Well, we have a couple items under current business, Mrs. Feeney, right?
Yes, I know. I'm just looking for my sheet. We have one item we discussed. Reimbursement. Okay, so administration reimbursement of fees for tree removal due to store damage. Mr. Tovo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President. If council recalls, this matter came to the attention of both the council and the administration after a storm took a tree down on Christmas 2020. At that time, they were informed by employees of the DPW that they would be responsible for the removal of the entire tree. Where there was a miscommunication, there was part of the tree did damage property belonging to a neighbor. As it turns out, that property damage was not sufficient enough to trigger an insurance claim. Therefore, under common law, wherever the tree lands, that owner is responsible to clean up that portion of the tree. In this case, the homeowner incurred the entire cost of the cleanup, and the only cost they should have incurred was a small amount that was actually on their property. I'm asking council to allow us to reimburse the resident in an amount not to exceed $2,000 once we establish how much of that tree was on their property that would have originally been their responsibility to remove, whereas the rest of it should have been the responsibility of the homeowner and our DPW, not on the homeowner.
And this is this is next to 484 Hoover Avenue?
I believe it fell across the street. That's why it involved a neighbor across the street as well as our roadway.
Okay, and then and it says 3 pines that fell from recent storm, correct? Chip all branch. Did it include the stump removal also, or no?
It did not.
Is that something that needs to be done or talked about it later?
That would be entirely on the homeowner.
Are you going to be, do you have pictures of does the homeowner provide any pictures of where this happened?
I do have photos. Quite frankly, they were, I believe, after the majority of the cleanup, though not while the tree was down.
Mrs. Jacob contacted the council after she paid the bill a while ago. I don't remember the exact date, but she was, I guess, given misinformation. So I'd like to make a motion that we pay this invoice from Mrs. Jacob.
Yeah, she sent the invoice back on February 7th of this year.
Yep. So I'd like to, if somebody second it, please, so we can get it done.
I'd like to get, do we have some additional like pictures or what happened where the tree was?
Well-
Especially since we've done with other people
Well,
require.
better than that, our DPW was on site while the tree was
Okay.
down, so they verified the location of the tree, where the origin was and what it impacted.
Yeah, it went across the roadway, right? All three of them, correct, Mr. Tova?
Correct.
Okay, I'll second it then if the DPW is verifying. Stu,
Councilman Casio,
Yes.
Councilman DeSena,
Yes.
Councilwoman Morgan,
Yes.
Councilman Sears,
Yes.
Council President Feeney.
yes.
Mrs. Feeney, before we move on, can I just, I'd like to have the council ask Mr. Poller to adopt one of the resolutions urging the legislature to amend Senate Bill 3454, also known as the Assembly Bill 53, to permit law enforcement officers to perform their duties without substantial risk of civil or criminal liabilities. I know the governor recently changed things, but I think we should pass something similar to what Midland Park did.
We can add it to the next council meeting, but I don't have it on the agenda this evening.
But can we have
So-
Mr. Poller start to review it so we
Yeah,
don't wait? until the
Absolutely,
meeting?
yes. So we can put it on for the next meeting. Sue, could you add it to the agenda for the next meeting?
But we
Absolutely.
have something
Thank
to
you very
review
much. I
and approve,
appreciate
Mrs. Feeney?
I'm sorry?
Can we have something to review and approve possibly rather than wait another month to do it?
No, as soon as Mr. Powell reviews it, when he can get us something, that's, usually how we've been.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure that was the direction. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Powell, do you need anything else from anybody?
No, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to take a 5-minute break and move on to 2021 budget discussion. We're going to be starting on page, I believe it's the top of, the top of page 15. The Director of Law.
That might have to wait.
Yeah, I did have a discussion with Sue.
Late this afternoon.
Yeah, very shortly before the meeting, actually.
Yeah.
That my discussion really involves a lot of closed session items. And I thought that there would be, ability to have a closed session, with me being able to go over those things. But with the Zoom situation and having to set up another meeting and all that kind of stuff,
At the last minute like that.
it just couldn't be done tonight. So we're asking that it be put off till the next meeting, which is.
And he go first up.
I'll go first.
So we don't have additional meetings, so the next meeting is Monday.
Right.
Right. And if we could do it like we did the one other one where we open up and we advertise that we're going into closed session,
Yeah,
discuss,
that's fine.
and then come back out.
That's absolutely fine. Then actually we are going to adjourn for the evening. Motion to adjourn meeting.
Wait, one second.
Sorry.
I wanted to ask one thing.
Sure.
Because it was on the current business, council ordinances, legislation, financials, miscellaneous. So on ordinances and legislations, I did send an email regarding the cannabis law that was signed into effect by the governor. And there's an opt-out period which goes to August, where we can take some action in terms of selecting where we want to go on the scale of involvement, non-involvement, opting in, opting out. It's somewhat self-explanatory. But in the meantime, all ordinances that outlaw cannabis in commercial settings, retail settings, at this particular point are effectively non-enforceable. So my recommendation is to put on for readoption as quickly as possible the one that we have in effect, and because we have until August to do a final opt-in, opt-out. We can always change it. So I'm just recommending that we get something on the books that you've already passed. Or there's an option to do that.
Okay, and I would recommend then, if Mr. Power, if any of the council members want to make a change, we should do it prior, or should we just, or is a recommendation?
No, you have to do things at meetings. You can't do things prior.
No, but I mean, to like let you know, do we need to, if there's going to be any changes,
No, what I'm saying is this. I'm just saying, since you enacted the other ordinance and you all like the other ordinance, at least get that back on the books. And then between now and August, you'll do your final opt-in or opt-out ordinance, is what I'm saying.
It's just another readoption of what we have, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, yeah.
With a new number and everything, you just reenact
The same
it.
thing, and then you'll have till August to get the other one done.
A new number. Right.
Yeah.
okay.
At your pleasure. It's up to you.
No, I think we should do it for the next one so we don't hit August.
Yeah.
So Sue, can you put that on, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else for what Mr. Pollard was speaking about?
Yeah.
Okay, motion to adjourn meeting. We'll reconvene budget on Monday, starting with Mr. Pollard.
Okay,
And-
Stacy, can we talk about the schedule for next week? Because I have to advertise.
I know. So next
Sorry.
week, we'd like to do Monday. And Sue, did you confirm about Tuesday?
Tuesday, I'm not available. I know myself
Can we do
and
Monday and Thursday or no?
Just wait 1 second, please, Councilman DeSantis. So she was just checking the dates with the planning and zoning and other
Yeah.
meetings that are going on. So
next week we should be open in that respect, but I know I'm not available on Tuesday night and I believe Mr. Tovo has a conflict Tuesday night. So if we could look at Monday, Wednesday, Thursday,
yes, I'd like to do Monday, Wednesday, Thursday.
7 PM.
Okay, does anybody have a conflict with any of those days?
I gotta check my schedule. I'll let you know.
Okay, if you could get back to me tonight or tomorrow morning, Councilman Cassio, please.
I'll get back to you tomorrow. I don't have my school schedule in front of me.
Okay, great. So Sue, you need to advertise by what time? By noon?
Noon. Yes. by
Okay.
noon time.
I am no good on Wednesday, Mrs. Feeney. I'm sorry.
Okay, we're gonna have to have if we have a quorum, we need to have a meeting. We are really
That's
getting
fine.
behind.
I'll join as soon as I can get there.
Okay, if we can, I think,
Can we
I
make
know-
Wednesday 7:30 and then I can get there?
yeah, we'll make Wednesday 7:30. That's fine. So we'll do Monday is 7, Tuesday is, Tuesday's no good. Wednesday, we can do 7:30 and Thursday is 7.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. And then Steve, if you could just let me know as soon as possible, if even
Yeah,
if
I
we have
got back to school night, one of those nights. I don't know what it is. Report
No,
card.
I know.
don't-
No,
let you
but
know.
what I'm saying is that even if it's a time, like if it's not 7 doesn't work or 7:30 works or 7:45 or 8, if we can get it somewhere in
Yeah.
that range, just
I
to,
will let Sue know. They're usually done by 7, so 7:30, so we should be okay. Okay.
Yep. Motion to adjourn meeting,
So
So
moved.
moved.
second.
So,
Yes.
okay, all in
Bye.
favor?
See ya.
Bye.
good night, everyone.
Right.
Right.